Beneath the shadow of the great tree called Konoha, one clan has lived under suspicion for generations. Uchiha. Blood and fire. Loyal, yet never submissive. When trust is betrayed. When justice becomes nothing but empty words. Separation. Not born of hatred, but because the path is no longer shared. The Sharingan sees through every lie. The will of Uchiha does not bow to the Hokage. This is a story of choice, and the price paid for freedom. I am Uchiha, the division of Konoha. When a clan steps out of the shadows, Shisui, you must believe in the third Hokage. Teacher Orochimaru is a disciple of the third Hokage, so perhaps this time, upon his return, he will inherit the position of fifth Hokage. If this is true, then all these achievements are naturally insignificant. After all, Teacher Orochimaru is about to become the fifth Hokage. Now, Uchiha Yoru directly transforms into a sincere advisor, his heart directed towards the Hokage Uchiha clan members, seemingly saying, Shisui, you shouldn't be so extreme. Shisui was also secretly beginning to doubt himself. When did he start doubting the village? He didn't trust the Hokage at all, damn it. Immediately, a deep sense of punishment welled up in his heart, and Uchiha Shisui instantly looked gratefully at this beacon of light in his life. Brother, thank you. I was being excessive. Not bad. After a night of swaying and shaking, Shisui thought his approach was extreme, and even showed a look of embarrassment. But Nightheart secretly shook his head, thinking, when you see Orochimaru return and find that no one in Konoha has nominated the fifth Hokage, your dissatisfaction will be doubled once again. Thinking about how to defeat Shisui and the third Hokage's will of fire is not something that can be done overnight, but rather requires a long period of time. Ideally making Shisui witness all of this firsthand. If it weren't for his words, the Uchiha wouldn't have gotten involved with Orochimaru as they are now. After Orochimaru returned to the village, Shisui was still racking his brains trying to gain the Hokage's trust for his clan, so he had no time for these matters. But there's a disagreement right now. Orochimaru isn't just in the Uchiha clan, even within the village, I wouldn't dare say 100%. But at least 6 to 7% of 10 ninjas believe he's the future Hokage, placing all his hopes on Orochimaru, and then portraying Orochimaru as a figure secretly enduring darkness and striving for glory in Shisui's eyes. TSK. Seeing Shisui sinking into shame and even a little self-reproach, Uchiha Yoru immediately laughed and patted him on the shoulder. Shisui, you're still very young. Although having your own opinions is right, you can't blindly trust just anyone. You need to consider things from multiple perspectives. Yes, boss, it's Shisui, the narrow-minded one. This time, Shisui truly realized his mistake, and Uchiha Yoru also smiled and nodded, saying, don't worry, we'll return to the village this time. After all, the border is very stable now, and we can't miss the ceremony where Orochimaru, the successor to the fifth Hokage, attends. In short, I want to make you, Uchiha Shisui, completely believe one thing. Orochimaru was summoned back to the village to take over as Hokage. Once this hope fills your mind, you'll realize how beautiful your thoughts are, and how cruel reality can be in the end. Upon hearing that Lord Orochimaru intended to return and take over as Hokage, Shisui immediately showed excitement, unaware that a dark future awaited him. Yes, big brother, I will definitely witness with my own eyes Lord Orochimaru becoming the fifth Hokage. At this moment, Shisui's eyes were filled with unwavering determination, pure fanaticism. He could already see the Uchiha clan and the Hokage's faction reconcile, and the Uchiha clan regain the village's trust. Meanwhile, Uchiha Yoru was silently frowning in deep thought, his mind analyzing the situation. He seemed to have discovered some unusual circumstances, especially since he had only received scattered information about the old villain Kishimoto during this period. In the original story, Orochimaru's betrayal and escape lacked a clear timeline, but even from a few snippets of his writing, one can deduce a general idea. When Orochimaru betrayed the village and fled, the third Hokage, who was in the village, heard the news and immediately, in a fit of rage, led the Anbu to capture him. From this, one thing can be confirmed. Orochimaru was either in the village or in a nearby area, definitely not too far away. The second clue is that in the anime, there's a short scene where Uchiha Itachi is training alone and is about to be riddled with kunai. At that moment, Orochimaru, who is secretly observing, is preparing to come out and rescue him. At this point, Orochimaru clearly hadn't betrayed or fled and was still wearing his forehead protector. Uchiha Itachi's condition at this time was unclear, but one thing was certain. Uchiha Itachi had activated his Sharingan, dodging countless kunai. Uchiha Itachi, being the son of the clan head, naturally had access to a secret training room within the clan. The fact that Orochimaru could come here proves one thing. The Uchiha and Orochimaru are on the same side. Otherwise, Orochimaru wouldn't be able to brazenly appear in the Uchiha's territory. According to the original source material, Uchiha Itachi's eyesight was broadened at the age of 8, which means Orochimaru was still a Konoha ninja before Itachi turned 8. If that's the case, then there should be approximately 2 years left. After a careful analysis, Uchiha Yoro immediately narrowed his eyes and smiled, while Uchiha Shisui beside him remained lost in self-reproach. These 2 years were real time. Uchiha Itachi, the Ninetales Knight, was 5 years old, but Naruto's birthday was on October 10th, so 2 months later Itachi would be 6. They had only just met recently. 3 months have passed this year, and next year Itachi will be 7 years old, giving him a whole year to prepare. The following year, when Itachi turns 8, he will awaken the Sharingan. Orochimaru will likely betray and flee after Itachi's enlightenment. He still has about 2 years to shear the sheep. No. To increase his strength, Itachi was 8 years old, 5 years older than the main character, Kenshin, who was only 3 years old at the time. Thinking of this, Uchiha Yoro immediately showed an excited smile, and looking at Shisui beside him, he felt even more amused. Shisui, when we return, we'll witness the 5th Hokage's ceremony firsthand. After hearing this, Shisui, with a determined smile, nodded and said, "Rest assured, Brother Yi, the Uchiha clan will definitely not be absent when the time comes." In his eyes, Big Brother Yo was a disciple of Lord Orochimaru and would eventually become a member of the Hokage's lineage. Wasn't this exactly what his clan and the Hokage were asking for? Naturally, he was full of confidence. However, Uchiha Yoro didn't think that way. On the contrary, his heart was filled with cold laughter, fearing that upon his return, what Orochimaru would be greeted with was a snowdrift. In the original Chunin exam, among the participating students, there were clearly quite a few who were slightly older than the average genin, such as Neji and the Spy Bag, who were at the bottom of the genin rankings at that stage. When Orochimaru betrayed them and fled, the 3-year-old in the group probably had never heard of Orochimaru's legend. So what about the slightly older children? It's very clear that Orochimaru was being kept hidden, even by the entire Konoha. If there wasn't any sound to diminish Orochimaru's prestige, at the very least, he would dare say that Danzo and the Sarutobi clan were definitely behind it. Perhaps the 3rd Hokage didn't have this intention, but he absolutely didn't stop it. Instead, he chose to tacitly acknowledge it. This is no different, because from the original story, it can be seen that the 3rd Hokage already sensed Orochimaru heading down the wrong path, as can be seen from the introduction of the 4th Hokage. Or rather, it's not just Orochimaru, but the entire Sannin community that has been downplayed. In the original story, the Sannin, after their appearance, were referred to using legendary ninja terminology. This is clearly something only the older generation of ninjas remembers, creating a disconnect among the new generation. The reason for wanting to diminish the existence of the Sannin is clearly to consolidate the current power pyramid within the Hidden Leaf Village. Once the Sannin get involved, the power dynamics will be reshuffled again, and no one wants this situation to occur. Haha, perhaps I've figured out the truth. At this moment, Uchiha Yoro narrowed his eyes and revealed a smile, while Shisui, hearing this, thought that his older brother was referring to the matter of recommending the 5th Hokage to the village after returning. 2 people, 1 sentence, yet their inner thoughts are 2 completely opposite things. Just 2 months after Sarutobi Shinizuke took over the Fire Country's border defenses against the Lightning Country, the Water Country's defenses were also taken over. Years of hard work and battle achievements were directly snatched away, and Sannin Orochimaru was ordered back to his village. When this news spread, countless ninjas on the front lines secretly frowned, as if this was a bit excessive. After all, Orochimaru, the cold-blooded leader, was still a hero of Konoha, Lightning Kingdom, Cloud Village. In the Raikage's office in the skyscraper, The relatively young fourth Reikage, AI, looked at the intelligence report that had arrived, and his rough face couldn't help but furrow deeply. Orochimaru is being sent back to the village. The front line has been changed to Sarutobi Shinosuke, along with the Uchiha and Hyuga clans. What is Konoha trying to do? They're really showing no respect for others. His front line had just slowed down a little, and as a result, Konoha immediately pressed forward. Wasn't this just saying they weren't afraid of them because they replaced him? Immediately, the Reikage glared with wide eyes filled with anger. In the office, a mature-looking middle-aged man, seeing the hot-tempered Reikage, immediately shook his head with a wry smile and said, "Reikage-sama." Although Konoha lost the 4th Hokage and some elites during the Ninetales Rebellion, its current strength is still very powerful. Regarding this intelligence from the front lines, there might be some information that is even more worth our attention. Earth-shifting, Cloud Village Jonin, successive Reikage's court official, successive Zetsu, the bull-wielding, hot-bladed judge. Highly trusted by the 3rd Reikage in his youth, he possesses a Keki Genkai bloodline limit. Naruto in the rubber mouth of the old man. Seeing the landowner bring over some of his expertise and intelligence, his expression became even more serious. The 4th Reikage irritably opened the scroll, and upon seeing the intelligence inside, his eyebrows immediately furrowed. Especially when he saw the date at the end, a look of solemnity flashed in his usually rough eyes. "So, Sarutobi Shinosuke, you're saying you received intelligence on the front lines 2 months ago. This intelligence report doesn't have many problems, but the most crucial point is the timeline, 2 months ago. No one knew that Sarutobi Shinosuke had arrived at the border to take up the position of commander. This is the biggest and most crucial problem." Immediately, the 4th Reikage's expression turned serious, and the Earth Guardian also nodded solemnly, saying in a low voice, "There's no issue with the timing. The problem is that the person who sent the intelligence doesn't seem to be someone we arranged. Although we used a spy to transmit information through the system, this spy has already been captured by Konoha, and this line of communication was supposed to be abandoned. We didn't expect someone to suddenly transmit information again." Upon hearing such words, the 4th Reikage immediately showed a serious expression. Indeed, this intelligence has been escalated to a higher level. We must pay close attention to it and take careful precautions. Being seasoned veterans of the ninja world, they naturally had seen a lot. Upon hearing this, Ditzdam nodded even more solemnly. "Lord Reikage, rest assured, there are only 3 possibilities for intelligence transmitted from this front line. First, our people haven't been exposed, but that's highly unlikely. Second, someone in Konoha is dissatisfied with the current situation or is too greedy and has betrayed their own village's interests. Third, this could very well be a trap set by Konoha. When spies are captured, the enemy often uses this intelligence network to pass on some false information. This is a common occurrence, and sometimes they even use this intelligence network to transmit some important information themselves, using it to prove their betrayal of the village. In most cases, they will demand money or other similar things. It's even possible to set up a grand scheme using some genuine intelligence, sacrificing some of one's own interests, and thus gaining even greater benefits in the end, ultimately achieving a decisive victory. Lord Reikage, the enemy's objective is very clear. They are currently using intelligence to exchange for gold and some precious medicinal herbs. After the person who secretly leaked this information from Konoha revealed the material demands, the 4th Reikage scoffed disdainfully, "Give it to me." The person who leaked this information must be of a high status. As long as the information is accurate, we'll give it to them. Yes, ninjas have always relied primarily on intelligence gathering, regardless of whether this person is real or fake. At the very least, they have some immediate value. It's just a few supplies, nothing unusual, right? If the other party didn't need anything at all, he would be suspicious. The opposing side is exchanging intelligence for gold and medicinal herbs, and similarly, they also have specialized departments to verify the authenticity of this intelligence. So they naturally won't be easily deceived. It all depends on the tactics of both sides. However, this time the Cloud Village ninjas miscalculated. After wasting countless efforts, they discovered that everything was for naught because the information they received was all true, not a single bit of falsehood. Let's change the terrain, prepare the front lines to launch another probing and harassing attack, and see what kind of circus Konoha is up to. Yes. The more composed and experienced Reikage, upon hearing this, didn't hesitate for a moment. On the contrary, he was filled with admiration for the Reikage's demeanor. This was the kind of person a Kage should be rough but never reckless, with a subtle depth within his roughness. Water Kingdom, Mist Village. In the gloomy space, Suikazen Fubuki's sharp teeth slowly parted. His eyes filled with amusement as he examined the intelligence report in his hand. A bloodthirsty grin playing on his lips as he said, "Haha, it seems there are quite a few like-minded people in the shinobi world." Betraying the interests of one's own village in exchange for greater personal gain is a common practice throughout history, and just like him, wasn't he also secretly and quietly betraying the interests of some villages? Haha, you have a rather large appetite, wanting so much precious medicinal herbs and gold, but I'll satisfy you. I hope you, little mouse, won't play any tricks. So the enemy has set up a trap. This matter is a joke to Suikazen Fubuki. Now that such a major incident has occurred in Konoha, the village has decided to launch a probing war against Konoha, of course, limited to a small-scale war within the village's control. The village of Mist has never felt any pain over these sacrifices. All they care about is profit. The land of Earth, Stone Village. In the tall Tsuchikage's office, the smaller-statured Tsuchikage, who didn't look like he did during the Fourth Great Ninja War with his hair and beard turning white, was clearly still full of energy. Looking at the intelligence report about the need for an upgrade that had been sent to him, Noki occasionally frowned, his expression becoming serious. Is this another case of someone betraying the village for their own selfish interests, or is it just another staged circus act? Noki muttered to himself, having experienced 3 great ninja wars, I'm full of shrewdness. When I look at this intelligence report and see what the other party ultimately needs, my eyebrows immediately furrow. That's a huge appetite, but it's not impossible. As long as the intelligence is accurate, it's certainly worth all of this. Muttering to himself, Noki placed the intelligence report on the table and immediately stamped it with an S-rank seal. Keep a close eye on this intelligence, and for particularly important intelligence, conduct thorough analysis. As for the gold and medicinal materials the other party requests, as long as they don't exceed the intelligence's value, then provide them. Having finally uncovered a Konoha mole of considerable status, he naturally had to press his advantage. Of course, it could also be Danzo from within Konoha pulling the strings, but this tactic has always been a common trick used by various nations. It's a matter of whose methods are more sophisticated, a test of each individual's chess-playing skills. Konoha. 6 months had passed, and Uchiha Yoru and Shisui's group finally returned to the village. After all, the tense atmosphere on the front lines had left them very nervous, but returning to the village brought a sense of relief. Returning this time with great composure, especially as a seinen, Orochimaru, looking at the cold and desolate main gate of Konoha, immediately broke into a hoarse grin, his tongue even licking his lips. With a hoarse chuckle, Orochimaru slowly entered the village. This scene was nothing unusual to others, but in Uchiha Shisui's eyes, it was full of mockery. Lord Orochimaru is a true hero. Since the Nine-Tails Rebellion last October, for a full 6 months, Lord Orochimaru single-handedly shouldered the pressure from 2 great nations and countless smaller countries. Given such pressure on the front lines, it's easy to imagine that things had calmed down in less than half a year. However, the fact that someone who had rendered such great service returned to the village in such a dejected state immediately aroused a sense of dissatisfaction in Shisui himself towards the current Konoha Hokage and his high-ranking officials. Sir, how could the village treat Orochimaru like that? On the way back, Shisui couldn't help but lower his voice, trusting Uchiha Yoru somewhat as he spoke his true feelings. Seeing Shisui's expression, Uchiha Yoru feigned a serious and solemn look, giving him a strange, thoughtful gaze. Shisui, you must believe in the will of fire. This might be the thought of a few rotten people, but it's definitely not everyone's. You must believe in the village. Currently, Uchiha Yoru appears to be solemnly warning Shisui not to harbor such terrifying thoughts, but inwardly he's overjoyed. That's just how people are. The more you talk, the more you suppress the other person's inner turmoil, preventing them from venting their feelings, which only makes things worse. If he were to vent alongside Shisui after the outburst, he would naturally begin to reconsider his earlier question. His current goal is to prevent Shisui from unleashing any of his potential, forcing him to suppress all the terrifying thoughts deep within his heart, waiting for the right moment to unleash a full-scale explosion. No, big brother, I didn't. I've always firmly believed in the will of fire. At this moment, Shisui was clearly a jonin, but when facing Uchiha Yoru, a chunin, he showed a hint of guilt, as if he had genuinely harbored some dissatisfaction with the Konoha high-ranking officials. At this point, he was saying one thing but thinking another. Seeing Shisui in this state, Uchiha Yoru immediately broke into a smile, stepping forward to comfort him by patting his shoulder and saying, "Shisui, perhaps the pressure on the front lines is too great. This time, when you return, relax properly. Don't be too tense. You must believe in the village, believe in the will of fire." Shisui, comforted by Uchiha Yoru, showed a smile, but inwardly he was filled with doubt. Was he really starting to doubt the village's high-ranking officials? No. How could he possibly be like that? It was initially just a matter of feeling somewhat indignant about the unfair treatment Lord Orochimaru received, but now that things have been said this way, he actually does seem to be overreacting. Humanity. Uchiha Yoru was overflowing with confidence in his control over humanity. The more he smiled, the more he wanted to shame Shisui. The more he did so, the more he believed in the evil thoughts in his heart, thoughts that, once suppressed, would be forever imprinted within him. I've been gone for 6 months and haven't returned. I really miss home. As Uchiha Yoruichi befriended Shisui, she casually smiled. But when Shisui wanted to say something, he suddenly saw the smile on Yoruichi's face and didn't know what to say. While Uchiha Shisui was still hesitating, unsure of what to say, the two of them arrived at the Uchiha clan's new territory. Shisui stopped in his tracks. He looked up, seeing the stunned smile on Uchiha Yoru's face, as if he couldn't quite believe it, and his heart grew even more uneasy. Over the past 6 months, he had at least gone back and forth several times to escort supplies, so he naturally understood the family's situation. But brother, you didn't know. The Uchiha clan's relocation of their clan territory was so desolate that it could hardly be described as deserted. It was truly like moving into an uninhabited jungle. The dense forest surrounding them brought fresh air and the chirping of birds. The newly opened Uchiha clan territory, which once occupied 3 times the area of the competition grounds, gave off a feeling of isolation, to put it nicely. A sense of separation, to put it less nicely, a feeling of being cut off. Yes, big brother. After hesitating for a long time, Uchiha Shisui opened his mouth, intending to comfort his older brother, but Uchiha Yoru reacted first. "So this is our new clan territory. I told you the village still trusts us, Uchiha. Otherwise they wouldn't have allocated such a large territory for us, haha." On one hand, she feigned a smile, but it betrayed a very clear forced expression. Even when she spoke of the village again, she lacked the confidence she had before, only a forced awkwardness. This scene made Shisui feel even more sarcastic. Uchiha Yoru, barely managing a forced smile, stepped forward and grabbed Shisui's shoulder, saying, "Shisui, quickly take me to the family's assigned house to see. I've heard you say before that my family is just as prestigious as the clan heads, and you even said you envied it." While chatting and laughing, the two slowly walked into the Uchiha clan's territory. Upon entering the clan grounds, they were met with countless gazes filled with deathly silence and loneliness, as if everyone was watching them. However, upon recognizing the ninjas of their own clan, everyone immediately broke into smiles. It seemed as if this place was home at this moment. Uchiha's cold gaze was a facade to hide his loneliness from outsiders. "Haha, Shisui, this is the house the clan chief bestowed upon you, truly worthy of being the one you envied. Such a large courtyard, you'll have to work hard in the future, Shisui." At this moment, Uchiha Yoru's natural laughter made Shisui even more uneasy. It was clear that the other party was trying to use a cheerful expression to mask the emptiness in his heart. After all, upon entering the village, he had sworn unwavering faith in the village, in the will of fire, and even warned him against any cowardly thoughts. Yet reality struck him so quickly. The Uchiha were clearly isolated. "Yes, elder brother, this is something the clan chief and elders said you rendered great service to the clan, and they specially prepared it for you." At this moment, Shisui also pretended not to notice your forced smile, and changed the subject, saying with a laugh, "You have rendered great service to the family. And these are all rewards from the family. All right, Shisui, you should go back now. I want to go back and take a good look at my new house." A group of people chasing after him, but this was what worried people the most. Shisui hesitated for a moment, then couldn't help but show a concerned expression, looking at his older brother, who trusted the will of fire so much, and said, "Brother, are you all right?" At this moment, he naturally noticed Shisui thinking one thing but saying another. Uchiha Yoru, feigning a resolute expression, turned his head and looked at Shisui, saying in a low voice, "Shisui, you absolutely must not think nonsense. You must have firm belief. As soon as Teacher Orochimaru becomes the 5th Hokage, all of this will change. These things are only temporary." Seeing Uchiha Yoru's resolute expression, with a hint of warning and determination in his eyes, Shisui immediately nodded solemnly. "Yes, big brother, rest assured. I will definitely wait until Lord Orochimaru takes over as Hokage. Then everything will change. Humans are like that. The more you try to prevent them from thinking wildly, the more they will start thinking wildly in a different direction." Uchiha clan territory, Naka no Jinja. In the gloomy stone chamber, only Uchiha clan head Fugaku and Uchiha clan elder Shizuna were seated in a row. Looking at the two of them, Uchiha Nightheart couldn't help but murmur to himself, "Is this some kind of bizarre family tradition? Do they like to meet in dark, secret rooms to exchange information?" Yoru, you have made contributions that have brought glory to the family, and the family will remember that. First, after a bowl of chicken soup was brought down, Uchiha Yoru feigned excitement, solemnly nodding and saying, "Clan head, elders, for the pride of the Uchiha, you're pouring chicken soup, so naturally I want to follow suit. My ancestors in my previous life had a good saying, when you don't have the power to change everything, you must learn to integrate yourself into it. Yoru, what is the village's purpose in summoning Orochimaru back this time?" As expected, the arrogant Uchiha clan never inherited the Hokage's talent for public speaking. A few simple, heartfelt words were enough to get the job done, directly shifting to serious matters. This was precisely what Uchiha Yoru appreciated most. However, he disagreed, vowing to learn more about the 3rd Hokage's speeches once he had the authority to speak within the clan. Uchiha Fugaku and the instantaneous elder exchanged questioning glances. At this moment, Uchiha Yoru couldn't afford to think too much and respectfully said in a low voice, "Clan head, elder, things are not very optimistic." What happened? At this moment, both Fugaku and the instantaneous elder showed serious expressions. Knowing the current situation of the Uchiha clan, they were practically ostracized by the entire village. Having finally managed to join Orochimaru's side, they didn't want to see anything happen to this side. Uchiha Yoru let out a deep sigh and then began to explain. The clan head, the elders, and even Teacher Orochimaru still aspire to become the 5th Hokage, but this deployment on the front lines clearly shows they're trying to steal the credit for the work. Even the teacher has secretly hinted that some people in the village don't want to see him become Hokage. I specifically asked Teacher Orochimaru about this. If Teacher Orochimaru were someone without any background as Hokage, it would be fine. But now that Teacher Orochimaru is a member of the organization, once he becomes Hokage, the village's interests will be redefined. Uchiha Yoru frowned even more at the latter half of the sentence, seemingly not understanding, but when it reached the ears of clan head Fugaku and Elder Shura, their expressions changed drastically. They understood those words perfectly well. At that moment, the elder couldn't help but yell angrily. As expected, the Sarutobi clan is stirring, but Sarutobi Hiruzen simply can't bear to let go of the benefits. "Elder, please don't get emotional." Although Fugaku also felt the same way, he remained relatively restrained and tried to persuade the elder beside him. As the representative of the pro-war faction, Elder Song Shanchen couldn't possibly submit like that. He didn't immediately let out a cold, mocking laugh. "Fugaku, haven't you seen clearly the village's interests have just been divided up, and once a new 5th Hokage emerges, it will undoubtedly represent the rise of a new power. At that time, it will inevitably affect the interests of the various clans in the village. They don't want that, especially Sarutobi Hiruzen. This clearly shows his lust for power." Seeing Sarutobi Hiruzen's displeased expression, clan head Fugaku shook his head and sighed. He didn't know how to advise him, so he turned to Uchiha Yoru and changed the subject, asking another question. Yoru, after returning to the village, do you know what arrangements Orochimaru has made for you? This is the crucial question. What does Sannin, one of Orochimaru's cold-blooded warriors, want to do? He can't possibly just be placed in the village as a mascot, can he? Even the elders were drawn in at that moment. Uchiha Yoru truly sighed inwardly, realizing that Orochimaru, through the summoning beast, had indeed shown him that this was the very thing he both sighed about and admired. The Hokage's political maneuvering is truly outrageous. One must understand that he only truly grasped this kind of politics after standing on the throne of Kakuzu, who lived 5,000 years ago. And how long has the shinobi world been around? How many generations have passed since the 5 great nations' rule? This political tactic can truly be said to have been devised by someone through a little bit of experience. Clan leader, elders, Orochimaru, our teacher, is now a member of Root, and he says he wants to carry out a top-secret S-rank mission. At this point, Uchiha Yoru looked up at clan head Fugaku and the instantaneous elder, and without waiting for them to ask further questions, he directly displayed an air of prioritizing the clan's interests and spoke in a low voice about this top-secret mission. Root plans to restart the wood release experiment, along with another test subject. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it is, but I do have some knowledge of medical ninjutsu, which is why I caught the teacher's attention. Upon hearing this, Fugaku and the instantaneous elder had completely different expressions. Fugaku secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't a major incident, it was fine. However, the instantaneous elder, thinking of something else, couldn't help but let out a displeased snort. Restarting the wood release human body experiment plan, what is the village trying to do? Isn't this very obvious? This clearly shows they want to guard against us, Uchiha. Wood release can counter Biju, and it's also a sharp weapon against us, Uchiha. It must be said that, when it comes to hatred towards the village, this elder of the pro-war faction must be the one to whom the hatred is most intense. However, Uchiha Yoru silently shook his head, sighing inwardly. The Uchiha clan had always been free and outside the center of power, unlike the Hokage, who had honed his skills and foresight over many years. This clearly shows that the plan is to hide Orochimaru, a top-secret mission that not only suits Orochimaru's taste, but can also resolve the upcoming political crisis. There's no need to elect a 5th Hokage. The interests of the village's high-ranking officials are guaranteed. It's much better this way. However, no one could have imagined that this snowdrift might completely dash Orochimaru's hopes for Konoha. Or perhaps, when all of this explodes, that's when Orochimaru will truly lose all hope. Clan leader, Great Elder, according to the information I've gathered, the wood release experiment plan in the village unexpectedly succeeded once before several years ago. This is the reason why it's being restarted this time. What? When Uchiha Yoru revealed this information, Fugaku and the instantaneous elder were immediately shocked, their faces changing drastically. Wood release. Fugaku might not have fully grasped it, but the instantaneous elder understood perfectly well what kind of terrifying existence this was. The village was successful, wasn't it? Moreover, they want to restart it. At that very moment, the countless grievances in the elder's heart instantly vanished, replaced by a deep fear. Would release. Only those eyes could counter it. Before the Uchiha possessed those eyes, conflict with Konoha was absolutely impossible. Clan leader, Elder Professor Orochimaru said that although the experiment was an unexpected success, this time the chances are very high. In a maximum of 2 years, as long as we fully support him, Professor Orochimaru, with this great achievement, will be able to claim the position of Hokage. This statement was naturally something Uchiha Yoru himself came up with, but when it reached the ears of clan head Fugaku and the instantaneous elder, it sounded different. Both were shocked, but at the same time, they showed a look of sudden understanding. That's right. If Orochimaru succeeds again like before, then with his wood release ninjas, his ascension to the Hokage position will be unstoppable. Instantly, their eyes filled with burning desire. They were powerless to stop the wood release plan, but they could still be involved with the future Hokage. Isn't Uchiha's current goal simply to regain trust between himself and Konoha? Regardless of what kind of wood release he uses, they can't control it anyway. But they didn't know that this so-called wood release was a completely ineffective version. Let alone the Mangekyo Sharingan, it could even withstand a 3-Tomo Sharingan. In the original story, Sasuke used his 3-Tamo Sharingan to torment Yamato, would release. These two words swirled around in the minds of Uchiha clan head Fugaku and the instantaneous elder, and it took them a long time to process them. Their hearts were still filled with unconcealed shock. Where was the Mad Village? Obviously not. So, it must be another possibility. Konoha had achieved a breakthrough in wood release. Seeing the clan head and elders mentally conjuring up the situation, Uchiha Yoru took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Clan head, elders. Although the village has restarted the wood release plan, due to the turmoil in Konoha, the financial deficit is still very large." Upon hearing Uchiha Yoru's words, the quickest to react was the elder, who coldly sneered, "Good. Good, the third Hokage's plan is truly excellent." At this moment, it wasn't just Uchiha Yoru who was bewildered, even clan head Fugaku looked confused. The elder, glancing at the two, sneered, "Is that even a question? Every research project is measured in years. If the wood release plan were so easy to develop, it wouldn't have taken so many years with only one unexpected test subject. Even if there was one, Orochimaru would need at least several years to achieve the current breakthrough, not to mention the current lack of funding. The Sarutobi clan, including its high-ranking officials, are all engaged in a protracted plan. Isn't the lack of funds the key to delaying Orochimaru's succession as Hokage?" At this moment, the elder instantly transformed into a cunning and intelligent being, revealing a disdainful, cold smile. What a despicable tactic, dragging out the effort for years, and Orochimaru will probably spend those years researching and then disappearing. Time is the most powerful weapon. By then, will Orochimaru's prestige still be what it is now? At this moment, the elder seemed to have seen through everything. The current high-ranking Hokage faction was reluctant to relinquish power and was seeking ways to delay Orochimaru's ascent to the Hokage position. After hearing this, clan head Fugaku also showed a look of sudden understanding, and couldn't help but nod solemnly, saying, "The elder is right, but this is also an opportunity for us Uchiha." At this point, Fugaku and the instantaneous elder exchanged glances, then immediately broke into smiles. Perhaps it wasn't good news for Orochimaru, but it was good news for the Uchiha clan. Wasn't this an opportunity presented to them? They were still lamenting that their relationship with Orochimaru wasn't close enough, that they hadn't done him a great favor, but now the opportunity had arrived. Yoru, the clan is preparing to fully support Orochimaru's research financially. At this moment, both of them made up their minds. Such a great opportunity, no one would easily let it go. Upon seeing these two highly intelligent individuals, Uchiha Yoru immediately showed excitement and solemnly nodded, saying, "Clan head, elder, for the glory of the Uchiha, I, Uchiha Yoruichi, will steadfastly and unwaveringly stand behind teacher Orochimaru." The clan meeting dispersed, and Uchiha Yoru was considered to have completely entered the center of Uchiha power, simultaneously deciding the future direction of the Uchiha. As for the consequences of associating with Orochimaru, it should be said that those involved with the Uchiha all ended badly. Not to mention the Uchiha, countless clans in Konoha wanted to join Orochimaru's side, even though Orochimaru was now facing the risk of being buried alive. He was still considered a desirable catch in everyone's eyes. Now that the Konoha high-ranking officials are all elderly, how much longer can they hold power? And Orochimaru is currently in his prime. The new generation hasn't even come of age yet. At least for the next 5 years, the only ones in the entire village qualified to compete for the position of 5th Hokage are the Sannin. Sannin! Jiraiya was unrestrained and carefree. Tsunade went far away to a foreign land, not to mention the competition for the 4th Hokage position both chose to give it up. Now, more than a year has passed, and in terms of popularity, no one can compare to Orochimaru. The fact that the high-ranking officials would prolong the policy was merely a matter of time, so countless people were thinking of ways to join forces with Orochimaru. Upon returning to his family's luxurious room, Uchiha Yoru narrowed his eyes, contemplating his plans for the next 2 years. According to his calculations, Itachi was currently 6 years old, and by the time he turned 7 or 8, it would be roughly the time when Orochimaru, the teacher, would betray and flee. Host, Uchiha Yoru 1-Tamo, Chakra Level, Elite Chunin. Chakra Attributes, Fire LV3 Lightning Leaf 4, Swordsmanship Tactics, LV4. Healing Ninjutsu Leaf 4 Gold Coins, 21.35 million. Looking at his own face, Uchiha Yoro immediately showed a troubled expression. He had worked hard for half a year, taking such great risks, and yet he had only managed to eat this much. He felt ashamed. These gold coins are enough to evolve the Sharingan into a 3-tamo form, but so what? Evolving into a 3-tamo form would at most push his physical strength and chakra to the level of a Jonin, and even that would take time. More importantly, wouldn't his Sharingan evolving to quickly attract greedy people? After all, his current status is very sensitive. There are definitely people in Konoha who hope that something will happen to the Uchiha who are relatively close to Orochimaru, especially Danzo, who is hiding in the shadows. Thinking this, Uchiha Yoro couldn't help but silently mutter to himself, ninjas rely on intelligence gathering. Now, if I suddenly reveal my healing jutsu, they might be able to deceive them. As for the Sharingan, I must try not to activate it before Orochimaru's betrayal and escape, or at most, to Magatama's. Therefore, I must become a Jonin, or even an elite Jonin, within these 2 years. Only then will I have real say in the clan. 2 years later, Orochimaru wanted to betray and flee. If he still possessed the same strength, he would truly be a discarded pawn. However, if he had sufficient strength and acted appropriately, he might not be unable to inherit a portion of Orochimaru's legacy. It's important to know that in the original story, Orochimaru betrayed and fled for 10 years, yet even then, Konoha still had a new generation of Mizuki who revered him. This shows just how much influence Orochimaru had. Furthermore, as a potential Hokage, how could Orochimaru not have a large following? This is his legacy. Orochimaru betrayed the Uchiha clan and fled, so the ones bearing the brunt of the attack were his followers. But with the Uchiha clan backing him, he naturally had nothing to fear. So what about the others? Thinking this, Uchiha Yoro immediately broke into a smile. Perhaps I need to spend these 2 years diligently improving my strength, or rather, becoming a decent genius in my teacher's eyes, but without having too much talent in bloodline abilities. Exchange for Magatama Sharingan, cost 1 million gold coins. Exchange for Shippuden Kakashi's ninjutsu talent costs 10 million gold coins. Exchange for 3rd generation Raikages. Physique talent costs 10 million gold coins. In an instant, a powerful, needle-like, numbing sensation swept through his entire body. Uchiha Yoro tried to suppress this agonizing, tingling sensation. This unbearable pain came and went quickly, disappearing in less than 2 minutes. It's not that he didn't want to trade for the Uzumaki clan's bloodline, but this was already a bloodline inheritance, and it was ridiculously expensive. To the point that the 3rd Raikage's innate physical talent, or rather, his physical talent enhancement, isn't really a bloodline ability. It's simply a talent that excels in a particular field. It's considered a kind of talent that strengthens the body. Gasping for breath, Uchiha Yoro lifted his head and immediately revealed a satisfied smile. Indeed, my guess was correct. Besides the bloodline exchange, physical enhancement is also a slow process of discovery, but Kakashi's hand seal speed is direct. Although the 3rd Raikage only appeared briefly in a few episodes, he was an incredibly impressive figure. Especially since the evaluations he received were the final decision he made after careful consideration. The 3rd Raikage was able to duel with a Biju until even the Eight-Tails was exhausted, demonstrating that in terms of both physical strength and chakra reserves, he was absolutely on par with a Biju. After all, this was a head-to-head battle. Especially the final battle, which involved fighting over 10,000 ninjas for 3 days and 3 nights until he died from exhaustion. Furthermore, given the opponent's lightning attribute nintaijutsu interaction, his exchange this time was more like a physical enhancement based on the 3rd Raikage's abilities. Feeling the Uchiha's body, Kakashi couldn't help but smile. Now that I've mastered chakra control, I'm practically a god. After all, I'm still in my peak, Kakashi. Kakashi's innate talent for ninjutsu is absolutely formidable, as evidenced by his incredible hand seal speed and his self-created rank ninjutsu, Chidori, at the age of 12. In Shippuden, Kakashi stood by the lake and began moving at a speed that was visually disorienting, as if he were using a super-fast technique, unleashing a jutsu in an instant. But only Uchiha Yoro clearly understood the changes his body had undergone. Hand seals. It's not just about having fast hands. Hand seals are about manipulating the chakra within the body. For example, a single hand seal can manipulate the flow of chakra in 8 chakra channels, but depending on the different ninjutsu techniques, the speed and location of chakra flow in each channel need to be precise. Therefore, the speed of chakra manipulation determines the speed of hand seals. Similarly, if your chakra circulates and manipulates very quickly, then naturally your hand seal speed is sufficient. Otherwise, in the shinobi world, everyone knows the advantage of hand seal speed and would have long ago practiced hand seal speed. The speed of chakra circulation can be innate, or what's called talent. Some people are born with naturally fast chakra, a level faster than others. There's also the process of acquired training through accumulating chakra circulation over time and practicing. This is like grinding iron into gold. The speed at which one performs hand seals can determine life or death in less than half a second, let alone the fact that he instantly saved over a decade of effort, a level that countless people could never achieve in a lifetime. After all, Hada Kakashi was able to become a Jonin at the age of 12, and his attribute record shows it's at its maximum value, which demonstrates his talent. As for Shippuden Kakashi, he's already 30 years old, meaning he's currently directly reaching the level of Shippuden Kakashi's strength. In other words, his hand seal chakra manipulation talent has now surpassed its maximum value. After all, he's only 15 years old, while Shippuden Kakashi is over 30. The most crucial point is ninjutsu. Ninjutsu is divided into 4 levels, S, A, B, and C, and there are also difficulty levels for training. If your chakra manipulation isn't up to standard, no matter how much you practice, you won't succeed. Not to mention some profound ninjutsu techniques require extensive chakra manipulation, which ordinary ninjas simply cannot achieve. To Magatama's Sharingan appeared in his eye sockets. At this moment, Uchiha revealed a smile as he felt the changes in his body, muttering to himself, "Awakening to Magatama's Sharingan once again accelerates the transformation of my physical body. The sudden increase in the speed of my chakra flow is somewhat understandable, but as for the third Reikage physique, that was originally a slow process, so it's just right." In the ninja world, awakening a bloodline ability or subsequent bloodline evolution is a world-shattering transformation. It's even common for individuals who went from being mediocre to becoming geniuses, because the limitations of bloodlines are inherently difficult to explain. Therefore, he evolved into Magatama's Sharingan, and the speed and control of chakra within his body suddenly increased significantly. This is understandable, as everyone's physique is different, and the direction of enhancement after the bloodline transformation is ultimately different. Host, Uchiha your second Magatama, Chakra level, Elite Chunin. Chakra attributes, Fire Leave 3, Lightning Leave 4, Earth LV1, Swordsmanship Tactics, Leave 4. Healing Ninjutsu Leave 4, Gold Coins, 350,000. Looking at his own attributes, although there wasn't much change, only the addition of the Earth attribute, he knew this was an increase after strengthening his physique. After all, according to the original source material, the third Reikage's attributes were Fire, Lightning, and Earth. Uchiha revealed a satisfied smile. With his long-term development, possessing a physique and aptitude similar to the third Reikage, even without the Sharingan, he would still have the potential to become a Kage-level being. And while it seemed like only the Sharingan had evolved, only he truly understood the changes in his own body. In Shippuden, Kakashi's hand seals were incredibly fast and chaotic, but according to the records, he and Itachi were both full of life force within their seals. His overall strength was already on par with that of a special Jonin, and he wouldn't suddenly arouse suspicion from others, especially his teacher, Orochimaru. More importantly, he could learn some of Orochimaru's advanced ninjutsu techniques even in his genius state. Haha, Professor Orochimaru, with my body transforming like this, you probably won't notice anything for now. After all, the third Reikage's physique and talent require a technique that can pierce through anything. At this moment, Uchiha revealed a cheerful expression. Even if Orochimaru had betrayed him and fled, with his current physical foundation, in a maximum of 3 years, he would absolutely be an elite Jonin. The third Reikage's physique, combined with Kakashi's talent for chakra control, made him an absolute genius. Orochimaru's return to Konoha didn't seem to cause much of a stir, except for news of intense bombing from the front lines. Lord Sarutobi Shinosuke's presence at the Konoha border has yielded significant progress and achievements. The border is nearing stability, and the Hyuga and Uchiha clans, bordering the water country, have also been brought to a standstill. Konoha, which experienced the Ninetales rampage last October, seems to be steadily recovering, on the verge of returning to its former peaceful state. The only difference is that Konoha now has the longest-serving third Hokage, and also the Sannin. The Sannin's presence seems to be diminishing at a terrifying rate. With Tsunade and Jiraiya absent from the village, very few people mention the former Sannin anymore. Instead, the village, now bustling with joy and prosperity, was filled with stories of the third Hokage's great achievements in stabilizing and reshaping Konoha. While Orochimaru, one of the Sannin, had become increasingly reclusive and inconspicuous, the third Hokage's reputation within the village was growing day by day. Especially during this turbulent time in Konoha, the third Hokage was practically the figure who stemmed the tide. And with the added influence of some high-ranking officials secretly pulling the strings, it seems all the credit for this success rests on the third Hokage. Even the ninja school students, through a gradual and blind adoration of the third Hokage, were invariably worshipped, with legends even claiming the third Hokage was the strongest Hokage in history. Ninja school. In less than half a year, the village experienced a dramatic upheaval following the Ninetales rebellion. Under the guidance of the third Hokage, the village was on the verge of peace. The third Hokage can undoubtedly be considered the strongest Hokage in history. At this moment, on the podium, a Chunin teacher was eloquently recounting the great achievements of the third Hokage, while countless students below listened with overflowing enthusiasm and excitement. But wearing only a short-sleeved black shirt embroidered with the Uchiha clan crest, Gunbai, the young Uchiha Itachi, looked at the countless enthusiastic students and teachers in his class. And at nearly 6 years old, he began to fall into deep thought. He had traveled along the front lines and even learned from Shisui that the commander-in-chief of the front lines, bordering both the land of lightning and the land of water, was none other than Lord Orochimaru. Wasn't all the credit for this achievement Lord Orochimaru's? Why has everything changed? Where did Lord Orochimaru go? Why is only the third Hokage here? Uchiha Itachi, with his relatively early maturity, didn't even realize that his thinking now was beyond the level of questions he should be asking at his age. At this moment, Uchiha Itachi harbored a deep-seated doubt in his heart, a question he needed to uncover himself. Fearing that all these things would change, even Uchiha Yoru himself didn't expect that Uchiha Itachi would take a completely different path from his original destiny. Itachi-kun. Just then, a faint sound reached him. Uchiha Itachi couldn't help but glance to the side, only to see a delicate-looking little girl with a quiet, gentle demeanor. She was hesitating, but finally seemed to bravely make a decision. That Itachi-kun, now that the front lines are stable, does that mean Lord Yoru also wants to return? Yoru. Now that the Uchiha clan has a member who is one of Orochimaru's Sannin, Uchiha Yoru's reputation is as bright as the midday sun. Naturally, Uchiha Itachi knew instantly and nodded slightly, saying, "Yes, Big Brother has returned." Upon hearing these words, the little girl immediately broke into a smile. At that moment, the sunlight shone into the classroom, revealing a clearly visible tribal emblem on the short sleeves of her dress. Konoha. The beautiful sunlight shone brightly in the village, everywhere exuding a youthful and peaceful atmosphere. Konoha, with its constant development, seemed to be immersed in a time of peace. Inside the Hokage's office building, peering through the crystal ball at the current atmosphere of Konoha, the third Hokage, with a pipe between his lips, smacked his lips, exhaling and inhaling the swirling mist, revealing a sense of relief and weariness. "Hiruzen, you've been working very hard lately." At that moment, in Yudatan Kaharu's office, Midokado Homura and the other person were sitting neatly beside each other, sipping hot tea. Midokado Homura's words caused the third Hokage to let out a deep sigh. "You guys, even though Orochimaru has gone astray a bit, he shouldn't be like this. As a master, he wanted to steal all the credit for his disciples' work and take it all for himself, even going so far as to completely sideline his disciple. This made him feel somewhat troubled." Seeing Sarutobi Hiruzen's self-reproaching demeanor, Yudatan Kaharu calmly took a sip of hot tea and said with a peaceful heart, "Hiruzen, Orochimaru joined Danzo Root. Root is a hidden force, just like Aburame Ryoma, so you don't need to blame yourself. This was Orochimaru's own choice." Initially, the fourth Hokage wasn't selected, but after Orochimaru joined Root, he did. Midokado Homura also noticed Sarutobi Hiruzen's troubled hesitation, and he sighed deeply, shaking his head and saying, "Hiruzen, you can't hesitate at this time. Orochimaru is too dangerous, and he's too close to the Hyuga and Uchiha clans. Once Orochimaru becomes Hokage, it might cause another upheaval for Konoha. From Kakuzu's political perspective, the third Hokage's family clan, a powerful collective force built up over many years, would be the first to suffer the impact if Orochimaru ascended to power. The Hokage's pie was so big, it would have been almost completely divided up by these high-ranking officials and the Ainu Shikacho clans. If Orochimaru were alone, it would be fine, but he also has his own group under his command, so if he couldn't get his share, he'd be snatched away. Furthermore, Sarutobi Hiruzen also felt that Orochimaru had gone astray, and once he became the fifth Hokage, the political struggles in Konoha would need to be reshuffled again. The price for this would be that the Konoha, which had just begun to stabilize, would once again fall into turmoil. At this moment, Sarutobi Hiruzen gazed deeply at his two old friends. Each had their own personal desires, but at the same time, they were both facing very serious problems that Konoha needed to confront. Perhaps you're right, Orochimaru isn't Minato after all. Ultimately, Sarutobi Hiruzen chose to remain silent and compromise, or rather, from the very beginning, he chose to stand idly by and watch countless people, including even his own Sarutobi clan, push all of this forward. The biggest advantage of Namikaze Minato becoming the fourth Hokage was that he lacked his own power base. After assuming the position, he needed to cultivate his own political allies, which was exactly what the previous Hokage factions did. The old generation fades away, and a new generation once again forges alliances. That's good. But Orochimaru has his own small group of forces, and that's a different story. After slowly exhaling a thick puff of smoke, Sarutobi Hiruzen lowered his Hokage hat by 3 inches, looked at the two men, and said in a low voice, "This matter ends here. The stability of Konoha is paramount." Was the third Hokage wrong? Judging from Kakuzu's political views, he wasn't wrong. Konoha couldn't withstand the turmoil, and the current situation is actually the best option for maintaining stability. After all, Konoha had just endured 3 painful wars. It's worth noting that Konoha sent its students to the battlefield in all 3 wars, so it's clear that the damage was devastating. These 3 wars had barely ended, and before they could even recover, the Ninetales Rebellion had already cost them countless elite ninjas, not to mention the death of the 4th Hokage, who had only been in office for a year. It's truly freezing cold, with both snow and frost. Konoha is now in dire straits and urgently needs rest to regain its strength. Choosing Orochimaru to ascend to power would mean a power struggle within Konoha, leading to political infighting. Moreover, Orochimaru is a man obsessed with ninjutsu, even to the point of straying from the right path. Konoha is currently in a weakened state, and once again falling into turmoil is something Sarutobi Hiruzen absolutely does not want to see. Hiruzen, rest assured, the village only needs 3 to 5 years of recuperation. Sarutobi Hiruzen's implied meaning was clear to both of them. It was a matter of shame, after all. Orochimaru was his disciple, so Midokado Homura naturally nodded solemnly. This is a political struggle. Orochimaru has his own main clan behind him, and they are not descendants of the previous Hokage's faction. This divergence arises, especially after the Hyuga and Uchiha clans pledged allegiance to Orochimaru. These are 2 extremely important clans. Therefore, Orochimaru's biggest challenge in becoming Hokage is confronting all the clans that were previously Hokage's faction. They have already divided up the spoils of the pie, and they absolutely will not allow anyone to snatch it back from them again and start dividing it up once more. Hiruzen and Shinosuke have both been able to single-handedly manage an entire area for 3 consecutive years. Uchiha Koharu's words immediately brought a smile to Midokado Homura's face, while the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, slowly lowered his head, a complex expression in his eyes. Everyone has selfish motives. Sarutobi Shinosuke, the son of the third Hokage, formerly the Anbu minister, and now a frontline commander, may be slightly less powerful than the older generation of cage-level ninjas and cannot be compared to the Sannin, but he is definitely considered one of the strongest among the new generation. As far as their status goes, the Sarutobi clan represents the entire Hokage's faction and their shared interests. This isn't just a selfish decision by Uchiha Kaharu and Mitokado Homura, but a decision made by the entire Hokage faction. If Sarutobi Shinosuke becomes Hokage, his first priority will absolutely not be to harm the interests of everyone present. Konoha will remain as it was before. Konoha is still Konoha. It's just that the people in charge have changed to a younger generation. After hearing this, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen fell silent, implicitly acknowledging it. Perhaps, in his heart, the stability of Konoha was more important than anything else. Initially, for the sake of the village's stability, he had introduced Namikaze Minato, and now he was implicitly acknowledging his own son becoming Hokage. From Kakuzu's political perspective, Sarutobi Shinosuke becoming the fifth Hokage meant that Konoha would remain stable under their control. The interests of the major clans would remain unchanged. And naturally, there would be no upheaval. From a private perspective, Kakuzu was overjoyed to see his own son become Hokage, a dual Hokage in the martial arts world. Sarutobi, we still need to keep a close eye on the Uchiha. Once the front lines are stabilized, I'm afraid the Uchiha might cause trouble. Ultimately, the conversation turned to the most pressing issue facing Konoha, and upon hearing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen also frowned, lost in thought. The Anbu have begun monitoring the Uchiha clan, and are also preparing to contact the first generation of Uchiha ninja. The Uchiha clan needs an heir to the Will of Fire. At this point, Sarutobi Hiruzen was filled with determination. Uchiha Kaharu and Mitokado Homura, upon hearing this, immediately smiled and nodded, saying, "We'll listen to you, Hiruzen." It's undeniable that Sarutobi Hiruzen's methods were incredibly ruthless. The supervisors were certain to monitor him, and he was also preparing to recruit several new Uchiha students. From the very beginning, the plan was to first get someone from the Uchiha clan on his side. He needed to know whether the Ninetales was related to the Uchiha clan, and even more importantly, he wanted to constantly monitor the Uchiha clan's movements. Because controlling the Ninetales in its prime was already a sword hanging over Konoha's head. Konoha Root. In the gloomy secret chamber, a malevolent, sinister figure with gleaming eyes gazed at the intelligence scroll in its hand. After a long silence, a hoarse, contemptuous laugh echoed through the chamber. "Ha, Sarutobi, you've got a great advantage this time." Although the problems outside Konoha are gradually stabilizing, the Uchiha within the village are a major problem. Muttering to himself, Shimura Danzu spoke of the Uchiha clan, and suddenly a sinister glint flashed in his eyes. He absolutely would not allow such a terrifying figure, capable of threatening Konoha's prestigious clan, to appear in the village. The Uchiha are too strong. Orochimaru, I hope that during this quiet period you can understand that the Uchiha and Hyuga clans cannot be allowed to grow into anything significant. At this moment, Shimura Danzu gave a cold smile, his heart filled with apprehension towards these two powerful families. The Uchiha and Hyuga clans of Konoha are two great noble families, possessing immense power and bloodline abilities. Under equal strength, a single bloodline ninja can fight to ninjas of the same level without necessarily losing. In the original anime, the Sand Village Elder Chio, a ninja from the Land of Wind, once solemnly stated, "If you encounter a Sharingan in a one-on-one fight, you must flee if it's two-on-one. Dig into their backsides." One must know that Chio, the Sand Village ninja, was of the same generation as the third Hokage and had experienced countless battles. Naturally, she would understand that this statement alone reveals the power of ninja bloodlines, especially those of the Uchiha clan, the most prestigious clan in the shinobi world. Similarly, an elite jonin, with the Uchiha Sharingan activated, can single-handedly kill an ordinary elite jonin. To be able to take on two equally powerful elite jonin at once is quite terrifying. While genin and chunin might not seem that important, as every large ninja village can easily train more with varying amounts of money. Jonin are the core strength of each ninja village and cannot be easily lost. Uchiha clan territory. Although the Uchiha clan's territory had moved to a remote area that was several times larger than before, it was clear that the Uchiha were isolated by the vast, ancient forest surrounding them. In a house belonging to an inland family, a solemn and imposing atmosphere emanated from within, and at this moment, the room was filled with the cries of a newborn baby. "Greetings, clan chief! Greetings, clan chief's wife!" In the living room, Uchiha Yoru was respectfully bowing to Uchiha Fugaku, while another person, Uchiha Mikoto, who was preparing tea for the two of them, also respectfully bowed. Haha, Lord Yi is being too polite. Uchiha Mikoto smiled and nodded, signaling the two to make tea, then looked apologetically at them and said, I'm sorry, Sasuke is still young and a bit noisy. At this moment, Uchiha Mikoto, with the demeanor of a housewife, was explaining the intermittent sounds of a child crying coming from the room, while Fugaku, as the clan head, wore a smile. Haha, judging by the family tree and lineage, you should address Mikoto as your sister-in-law tonight. Even the usually stern Uchiha Fugaku rarely showed a playful, smiling expression. Seeing this, Mikoto's beautiful eyes flashed with surprise, while Uchiha Yoru, upon hearing it, broke into a smile. Sister-in-law, clan leader. Uchiha Fugaku naturally had the intention of persuading him, and he naturally wouldn't refuse this favor. Moreover, this statement also caused Uchiha Yashin to reveal a look of excitement and emotion. He finally entered the center of power within the family. Ninjas playing politics? Thinking of playing politics like in your previous life, you need the strength to participate. The point of contention is that in this ninja world, the most important thing is one's own strength. Without Jonin strength, you simply cannot participate. Uchiha Yoru naturally understood the reasons why he could receive such preferential treatment. Firstly, he possessed Tamagatama Sharingan eyes. At only 15 years old, he was already a top-tier chunin, and with the addition of his bloodline ability, becoming a Jonin in the future would be no problem. For ordinary ninjas, the process of becoming an elite chunin or jonin is incredibly long. Even a particularly skilled jonin requires a long period of training, sometimes taking a lifetime to reach the rank. Don't you see Yui Kurenai and Mitarashi Anko? They became chunin at 13 and 12 years old respectively, but after 12 years of rigorous training, one became a jonin, the other a particularly skilled jonin. But for ninjas with bloodline abilities, at this crucial moment, awakening or upgrading your bloodline will bring about an overall improvement. That's the difference. Others need over a decade of rigorous training, but the awakening or advancement of the Uchiha Sharingan shortens this time. Haha, Knight's talent is quite good. Itachi will have plenty of trouble for Knight Lord in the future. Sharing the same opinion, Uchiha Fugaku, with a beaming smile, finally revealed his true intentions. Their relationship on the family tree is that of the eldest brother and sister-in-law. Damn it, I don't even know how many generations to trace that. Why don't you just say they're one and the same ancestor? Upon hearing these words, Uchiha Yoru revealed a humble smile. If the clan head doesn't dislike me, how could I possibly have any objections? Looking at the humble and tactful young man before him, Uchiha Fugaku immediately revealed a satisfied smile, secretly nodding in admiration. No wonder he could get close to Orochimaru and gain his trust. Both sides also considered it a mutually beneficial exchange. With this one sentence, the elder sister-in-law said that Uchiha Yoru had become the head of a branch of the clan, giving him a solid backing within the family, and in return, a significant price was the acceptance of his disciple. That's exactly the kind of relationship he had with Sarutobi Hiruzen, Jiraiya, and Namikaze Minato. Now that Uchiha Yoru is Orochimaru's disciple, what if Uchiha Itachi were to become Uchiha Yoru's disciple? Haha, Uchiha Itachi wasn't destined to become Orochimaru's disciple, but becoming his grand disciple isn't bad either, is it? First, they both have another layer of Hokage's lineage skin. At this moment, Uchiha Fugaku was filled with admiration and satisfaction at the skillful handling of the situation by the young man before him, and Uchiha Yoru also felt secretly fortunate. He was so sleepy that he ended up lying on a pillow. At first, he was worried that after Orochimaru betrayed him and fled, his identity, although not necessarily subject to revenge, would definitely be implicated. But Uchiha Itachi disagreed. He didn't care about Konoha, but within the Uchiha clan, his power was something he wanted and couldn't afford to be affected in the slightest. Uchiha Itachi became his disciple, so naturally he also wanted to emulate Orochimaru's lineage. Immediately, the two foxes, one large and one small, both revealed grinning expressions, believing they had gained an advantage. One had used its power to pave the way for its son, while the other had used its prophetic intuition to pave the way for itself. Haha, I'm going to call Itachi, that kid, over here. Meanwhile, the gentle Uchiha Mikoto, upon hearing these words, immediately broke into a smile, nodding and laughing at the two of them. Watching Uchiha Mikoto turn and leave, Uchiha Yoru, with a smile on her face, lowered her head, and a flash of light flickered in her eyes. Uchiha Mikoto, the daughter of the instantaneous elder, don't be fooled by her gentle, housewife-like appearance. The instantaneous elder is a staunch warrior, and this elder sister-in-law is no ordinary person either. Before marriage and having children, she was an elite ninja within the clan, a three-tamo elite jonin at that. With a rustling sound, the wooden sliding door swung open, revealing Uchiha Itachi, nearly 6 years old, respectfully entering the living room. Despite his young age, he already exuded an air of composure. The moment Uchiha Itachi entered the room, Uchiha Fugaku's smile softened, becoming 3 times more solemn. He first glanced at his own son, then pointed at Uchiha Yoru and said solemnly, "Itachi, from today onwards, you will be a disciple of the Night Lord." At this moment, Uchiha Itachi showed a hint of surprise, while Uchiha Yoru, seeing this, revealed a smile, secretly thinking to himself, "Heaven is helping me. I don't believe I can't get rid of this bastard." "Yes, master." As expected, Uchiha Itachi was still a well-behaved child, obediently following his father's instructions and respectfully performing the Uchiha Night March. Meanwhile, Uchiha Fugaku, upon witnessing this scene, immediately broke into a smile. "Haha, Itachi, even Night Lord is like your cousin, your uncle. So you won't lose anything by taking Night Lord as your teacher." Hearing this, Uchiha Nightheart chuckled. Indeed, those involved in politics have to be cunning. Now he's even become a relative, but seeing things from this perspective, it's quite comfortable. "Clan leader, you're too kind. I will certainly do my best to teach Itachi." "Yes, I will find an opportunity to discuss this with teacher Orochimaru. Perhaps Itachi would also be very suitable for the Ryuchi cave summoning beasts." When Uchiha Yoru said this with a laugh, Uchiha Fugaku, standing beside him, immediately broke into a cheerful smile. This scene surprised even the younger Uchiha Itachi, who was usually so stern, now displaying such a cheerful demeanor. Uchiha Itachi was indeed very skilled, but when it came to politics, he was completely clueless. Otherwise, how could he have become such a scoundrel in the original story? Uchiha Fugaku's beaming smile clearly indicated the stability of his successor. If his son could summon a Ryuchi cave summoning beast, he could be considered part of the Hokage faction. Now that he was in his prime, once his son grew up, wouldn't he be perfectly suited to inherit the clan head position? And wouldn't Uchiha Yoru be perfectly positioned to become an elder within the clan? Orochimaru's status as a disciple is naturally insufficient, but the 5th Hokage wondered if the status of a Hokage's disciple was adequate. Uchiha Fugaku's beaming smile was all because of this. Orochimaru would sooner or later become the 5th Hokage. So giving Uchiha Yoruichi the position of elder was enough. This was a political investment. Even though Uchiha Yoru Fugaku had recently been oppressing Orochimaru, he still scoffed disdainfully. Sarutobi Shinosuke. What difference would it make if he received credit for his achievements on the front lines? The prestige of the Sannin couldn't be easily erased, let alone their strength. Seeing the clan leader's radiant smile, Uchiha Yoru also smiled, nodding and saying, "If clan leader has nothing else to say, then I'll go down and get acquainted with Itachi first." Seeing this scene, Uchiha Fugaku immediately broke into a smile, nodded and said, "Yoru, you and I are family, so calling me big brother is fine as long as there are no outsiders present." Although the language was rather casual, Uchiha Yoru knew the ins and outs of it. He understood a little, but taking it seriously would be a bit impolite. Immediately, he put on a grateful smile and nodded, saying, "Clan head, I will definitely teach Itachi well. However, Orochimaru's research is a bit tight lately, and I'm afraid I won't be able to teach Itachi properly. My suggestion is to have Shisui teach Itachi as well. After all, Itachi's talent shouldn't be wasted." Upon hearing this, Uchiha Fugaku smiled even more contentedly and nodded, "Good. From now on, Itachi will rely on Night Lord." Uchiha Shisui, however, was the most exceptionally gifted individual in the clan over the years. His talent even rivaled that of the genius ninja Hada Kakashi, not to mention now that he had awakened the 3-Tamo Sharingan. In his eyes, Kakashi had already been surpassed by Shisui. This is the difference between a ninja's bloodline and an ordinary ninja. In this era, Hada Kakashi is truly the epitome of genius. He graduated at 5, became a chunin at 6, and a jonin at 12. Indeed, he was a prodigy born with superpowers. However, his ordinary bloodline prevented him from progressing further, not to mention that his Sharingan also hindered him. In the spacious courtyard, there was a not-so-small artificial lake, and at this moment, Uchiha Yoru, Uchiha Shisui, and 6-year-old Uchiha Itachi were sitting neatly beside it. Shisui, the task of instructing Itachi on matters of the heart will be entrusted to you from now on. At this moment, Uchiha Yoru feigned a look of profound remorse, but seeing this, Uchiha Shisui casually chuckled. Don't worry, big brother. I will definitely teach Itachi a good lesson. For Shisui, teaching Itachi wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing for the Uchiha at the moment was to build the closest possible relationship with Orochimaru. Although 6-year-old Uchiha Itachi was mature for his age, his conversation with the two of them still had a touch of naivety. However, his intelligence allowed him to learn to memorize everything beforehand and then carefully consider and organize it upon his return. Yes, what exactly did Itachi learn at school recently? Shisui and Uchiha Itachi were somewhat familiar with each other, and Shisui couldn't help but show a casual smile, as if asking a question to a child. The relatively serious Uchiha Itachi, after listening, respectfully began to recount his school curriculum. Besides these traps, the disguise also includes the three-body technique, which is handed over to the nearest teacher, who frequently lectures on the will of fire, especially mentioning that the third Hokage was the strongest Hokage in history. After watching Uchiha Itachi solemnly report on his work, especially after he said the last sentence that the third Hokage was the strongest Hokage in history, Shisui's face immediately showed an unusual and strange expression. Next to Uchiha Yoru, someone smiled and nodded, saying, "That's not entirely wrong. After all, the third Hokage is indeed the longest-serving Hokage in Konoha's history, and in this respect, he can also be considered the strongest Hokage." Having clearly experienced some things on the front lines before, Itachi looked at the two with a puzzled expression and asked, "Teacher, Shisui-san, could you explain what the will of fire is?" Shisui was immediately stunned upon hearing this. The will of fire. However, seeing Uchiha Itachi's bewildered expression, just as he was about to say something, a burst of laughter erupted from the knight beside him. Under the skeptical gazes of the two, Uchiha Yoru smiled, shook his head, and said to Itachi, "Remember to ask first whose words these were before asking any questions." At this moment, Shisui was also dreaming. Who uttered the words will of fire? Looking at the two of them, Uchiha Nightheart inwardly sneered, seeing that the Ninja Academy was now impatiently beginning to brainwash its students, making them forget the heroes on the battlefield and begin to romanticize Sarutobi Hiruzen, the third Hokage. If he didn't know the future, he could have predicted the situation with 80 to 90% certainty by comparing future and present circumstances. He couldn't help but sigh. Indeed, he's worthy of being a politician. He started planning and strategizing early on. From the very beginning, Orochimaru was destined to fail. The first condition for becoming Hokage is that, without the strength to overpower the village, you shouldn't even dream of challenging for power. Instead, you must learn to integrate and allow these powers to propel you to the top. Clearly, Orochimaru's political maneuvering wasn't bad, but it was a roundabout approach. However, it's understandable. Given Orochimaru's arrogance, he wouldn't allow others to dictate his actions. Uchiha clan territory, the family's courtyard. At this moment, Uchiha Yoru revealed a look of divine reverence and said, "Itachi, do you know the name of the village Konoha? And what about the prospect of our place being called the Land of Fire? And what about the prospect of our Land of Fire's cage being called Hokage?" This statement left Uchiha Itachi with a bewildered and innocent expression. Not only him, but even Shisui beside him looked skeptical, as if he wasn't entirely clear on the matter either. Upon witnessing this scene, a subtle, almost imperceptible glint of cunning flashed in the depths of Uchiha Yoru's eyes, yet his face displayed a fervent and resolute expression. The first Hokages would release technique reign supreme, establishing the village known as Konoha, and the Uchiha ancestors, who were on par with the first Hokage, joined forces with the Senju and Uchiha to usher in the chaotic warring states period, ushering in the current era of the 5 great nations. At this point, it was clear that Uchiha Itachi was unaware of these things, but Uchiha Shisui's expression changed drastically upon hearing it, and he hastily exclaimed in surprise, "Brother, this is forbidden." Seeing Shisui's expression change drastically, Uchiha Yoru shook his head, giving Shisui a meaningful look. "Shisui, our ancestors may have been wrong, but what about our achievements? Achievements cannot be concealed, can they? Do you want to deny the Uchiha clan's past? During the chaotic Warring States period, the average lifespan of ninjas and civilians was only about 30 years, and ninja clans would send their ninjas to the battlefield at the age of 5 or 6. But now, in the era of the 5 great nations, during peaceful times, ninjas go to the battlefield at around 10 years old, and the average lifespan of ninjas and civilians has increased to 50 years or more. This is the achievement of the Senju and Uchiha clans in ushering in this era." As Uchiha Yoru spoke solemnly, or rather, using an objective tone like Kakuzu, Uchiha Shisui, although somewhat uncomfortable, had no choice but to acknowledge these facts after hearing them. Meanwhile, Uchiha Itachi beside him seemed to have opened up a whole new world, radiating a glimmer of hope. During the founding of the 5 great nations, the Senju clan joined forces with the Uchiha clan to establish what is now the Land of Fire, Konoha. Because of the Senju's wood release, it has the current name Konoha. Similarly, the title of Hokage of the Land of Fire originated from the Uchiha clan, who used fire release. At this point, Uchiha Yoru's expression became even more arrogant and proud. He solemnly patted Itachi on the shoulder and said, "The true will of fire is when the Uchiha fire release burns the Senju wood releases giant tree, with leaves flying everywhere and burning. That is the true existence of the will of fire. Where Konoha dances and flames grow, the fire continues to flourish. The light of the fire will continue to illuminate the village, and at the same time, cause new leaves to sprout." At this moment, Uchiha Yoru muttered this sentence to himself, causing Itachi and Shisui beside him to show a clear look of hope. This is the will of fire, meaning that the Senju of Konoha are soaring and dancing below, while the Uchiha's flames are constantly flourishing. The Uchiha's fire release will become the light protecting Konoha, and the Senju will protect the new future that is sprouting again. Uchiha Yoru now exuded a divine aura, seemingly transforming into a beacon of light in the darkness, illuminating the path for the 2 figures mired in gloom. These words weren't just his guesses. Konoha was originally formed by the Senju and Uchiha clans joining forces and gathering a number of smaller clans. Otherwise, with the first wood release and the second water release, you could call them Hokage. That's not nonsense. Indeed, the village's cage wasn't called the wood cage, nor the Mizukage, nor was he a forbidden jutsu user, but rather the Hokage. At this moment, young Uchiha Itachi seemed to have a new train of thought opened up within him. He immediately showed excitement, nodding solemnly and saying, "Yes, Sensei, Itachi understands. The Senju joining forces with the Uchiha to protect the village is the true will of fire." Seeing Itachi seemingly find a similar purpose in life, Shisui, standing beside him, was a little surprised and felt something was amiss. However, upon careful consideration, he realized that what Brother Ya said was right. Weren't the Uchiha's purpose in life to protect Konoha? Looking at the 2 of them, Uchiha Yoru smiled and nodded, saying, "Initially, the Senju and Uchiha joined forces to found Konoha, becoming the unshakable overlords of this land. Following them, countless smaller clans came to join, including the Nara, Akimichi, Yamanaka, Sarutobi, and Shimura clans. The Senju and Uchiha also took on the responsibility of protecting the weak. This is the work of the Uchiha clan, a work that cannot be erased from the entire shinobi world. Next, we'll move on." At this point, Uchiha Yoru's previously divine gaze immediately dimmed, as if his firm belief had been misplaced. Shisui clearly knew what he was about to say, and hesitated to speak, but then remembered that Itachi, as the son of the clan head, naturally knew these things, so he ultimately fell silent. Following the founding of the Land of Fire, Konoha became the unshakable dominant power in this land. This led to other forces, unwilling to be conquered, establishing other nations of varying sizes, which is the current state of the shinobi world. The Warring States period passed, giving rise to the present shinobi era, but at this time, the ideologies of the Senju and Uchiha clans who founded the Land of Fire diverged. A divergence? At this moment, Uchiha Itachi showed a curious expression, while Shisui beside him recalled the clan's historical records he had read, and his heart sank into despair. Looking at the 2 of them, Uchiha Yoru sighed with a touch of melancholy and said, the Senju believed that peace was hard to come by and did not want to wage war against other nations. For the sake of peace, and even more so to balance the power of each major ninja village, they divided the Biju into 5 great nations. But the Uchiha didn't see it that way. He believed that the current peace was only temporary, and that lasting peace required bloodshed. He intended to join forces with the Senju to unify the shinobi world, thinking that temporary pain could lead to lasting peace. This was a divergent view. Later on, Uchiha Yoru stood observing from the sidelines as Kakuzu slowly recounted the history of the conflict between the Senju and Uchiha clans, and even the reasons why the Uchiha eventually became police officers. After Uchiha Yoru finished speaking, Shisu frowned and fell into deep thought. He had reviewed the records and heard what his elder brother, Yoru, said and found almost nothing to be wrong. However, having once studied this history alone, he had always believed that the clan was at fault, leading to the conflict between the clan and the village. Therefore, he had always considered it a taboo subject. But today, as an observer listening to someone else's account, it seemed to open up a different world for him. Shisui's contemplation now wasn't about the existing conflicts within his clan and village after all. He already knew all of that, but rather about the conflicts that had occurred previously. Where did the Uchiha go wrong? And how did the Senju fare against them? Peace followed the Senju, but war broke out. The Biju, once a balancer among the 5 great nations, transformed into a war machine of battle. World War II. And then there were the brutal Third War. How long has it been since all this? It seems the Senju weren't entirely right either. So, is Uchiha correct? That doesn't seem right either. At this moment, Shisui was filled with confusion. Where was the path to peace? The Uchiha clan's direction towards war was wrong, but similarly, the Senju clan ultimately led to war as well. Just as Shisui was lost in doubt, the young Uchiha Itachi, despite his precocious intelligence, was only 6 years old at the time. Upon learning the true will of fire, a look of pride immediately appeared on his face. Yes, Sensei Itachi knows that the will of fire is what the Uchiha and Senju use to protect countless weak and vulnerable people. At that moment, in the confused mind of young Itachi, a lifelong ideal of pride flashed through his head. I, the Uchiha, am here to protect the village. But at this point, Uchiha Yoru revealed a smile. What he said wasn't false at all originally. It was the Senju and Uchiha who protected Konoha. However, when Itachi found out that the people he protected had betrayed him and wanted to overthrow those who had once protected him, what could he do? From the original story, it's clear that in Itachi's ideology, the Hokage is a sacred protector of the village, while the Uchiha have become an unstable element. Now he wants to rebel. The Uchiha are supposed to protect Konoha, but countless people in the village want to overthrow and destroy the very entity that once protected him. So what should you do? That night, teacher, you were talking about village history. If the shinobi world only had one land of fire, Konoha, would there have been no war? At nearly 6 years old, Uchiha Itachi voiced his doubts, as he was only 6 and, after learning about the true will of fire, naturally became very interested in the village's history. He was also filled with questions about the past divide between the Uchiha and Senju clans. Experience has shown that the Senju concept of peace failed, or rather, only lasted for a short period of time. But the simple, innocent 6-year-old Uchiha Itachi's questioning opened up a new direction for Shisui, who was lost in confusion beside him. Seeing Shisui's constantly changing expression and Itachi's innocent, hopeful, and questioning look, Uchiha Yoru shook his head with a wry smile and said, Itachi, you're still young. I can't give you an answer to this question, and no one in the shinobi world can give you one either. This answer has never appeared before, so naturally, there's no right or wrong answer. Haha, you're only 6 years old. Why think so much? Your top priority right now is to graduate from the Ninja Academy, then become a proud member of the clan, and lead the Uchiha to continue protecting Konoha. That's your life goal, so don't think about anything else. Unable to come up with a definitive answer, Uchiha Yoru burst into laughter, patted young Itachi on the head, and pushed all those questions to the back of his mind. Meanwhile, a simple seed of doubt took root in young Itachi's heart. Even at the age of 6, Itachi's inner world was already fantasizing. If the shinobi world consisted only of the land of fire and Konoha, wouldn't there be no wars on the borders? Meanwhile, Uchiha Shisui, with a complex expression, looked at his revered older brother, Knight, and said, with the Senju's ideal of peace implemented, the shinobi world has experienced 3 great wars in just a few decades. What if the Uchiha's ideal were implemented? Facing Shisui's inquiry, Uchiha Yoro immediately feigned surprise, then quietly chuckled, Shisui, don't think nonsense. This is history. I'm merely explaining it to Itachi without bias. This is a responsibility he, as the son of the clan head, must bear. Although he didn't say anything, Shisui lowered his head, his mind racing with countless thoughts. The first Hokage's ideals of peace seem fundamentally incapable of bringing about peace. Instead, they have caused the former clan-to-clan conflicts to escalate into the current nation-to-nation conflict. The biggest difference seems to be that countless petty killings have transformed into large-scale bloodshed. Konoha, with its countless clans, is no different from any of the great nations in the genin world. It's simply a miniature version. The more Uchiha Shisui saw, the more horrified he became. The fact that every clan in the village ostracized the Uchiha clan seemed to stem not only from fear of the Nine Tails, but also from vested interests. The Uchiha clan benefits. Thinking of this, Shisui immediately broke out in a cold sweat. The Nine Tails' suspicion was merely a signal, giving countless clans the opportunity to exploit a piece of the Uchiha's territory for their own benefit. Thank you, Senseiya. Itachi knows the will of fire. At this moment, the nearly 6-year-old Itachi seemed to have found a glimmer of hope in his bewildered heart, and a childish, determined smile appeared on his face. Seeing Itachi's innocent smile, Uchiha Yoro also showed a joyful and encouraging expression, saying, Itachi, you're doing very well. Try to graduate as soon as possible. Upon hearing this, Uchiha Itachi nodded firmly, yes, sensei, please rest assured. I will definitely do my best. Although Itachi had matured early, he was still a 6-year-old child no matter what. Uchiha Yoro narrowed his eyes, looking at Shisui beside him, whose face had turned pale as if he had scared himself. He immediately began to weigh his options. Shisui, what are you staring at? Remember to teach Itachi a lesson later. Shisui, startled by the pat on the shoulder, was immediately taken aback. Following Uchiha Yoro's instructions, he forced a smile and nodded, saying, yes, big brother, rest assured, I will definitely teach Itachi well. It's quite clear that the more mature Shisui becomes, the more he's strayed down the wrong path. No, it's more accurate to say his thinking has become more rigid and he's overthinking things. However, this was something Uchiha Yoro was happy to see, and he chuckled softly, patting the other person on the shoulder. Shisui, you can't do it this way, you're not even as good as Itachi. Look, Itachi knows that fire represents the Uchiha, and the will of fire is the essence of the Uchiha. As the mocking sound subsided, the 3 Uchiha present each had their own thoughts. Uchiha Nightheart pondered silently, occasionally setting the stage, but he absolutely could not relax his surveillance of Itachi. Otherwise, his opportunistic disciple would truly fall into someone else's hands. Shisui, on the other hand, wasn't so bad. After all, his thinking was mature, and as you can see from the anime, although Shisui was powerful, he preferred to rely on others for support. In the anime, Shisui's character is portrayed as someone who has placed their spiritual foundation in the Hokage system. This is also the reason why, after that spiritual foundation crumbles, he chooses to escape reality and commit suicide. To put it bluntly, they possess immense power, but in the future of their family, they prefer to rely on others rather than using their own strength to change things. At this moment, Shisui forced a smile onto his face, but inwardly he was secretly terrified. He could only hope that Lord Orochimaru would seize the opportunity to become the 5th Hokage. Only then would the Uchiha have a chance. The youngest, Uchiha Itachi, was silently lost in thought. He realized that the will of fire was something the Uchiha clan had come up with, which meant the Uchiha clan possessed a similar will of fire. Thinking this, he immediately broke into a smile, though a lingering doubt remained in his mind. That's right, the nearest school teacher said, who is stronger? The 3rd Hokage who quelled the chaos, his ancestor, or the 1st Hokage, Konoha. The armed law enforcement system of Konoha, the Land of Fire, consists of 5 departments in order: the Hokage Department, the Anbu Route, the Intelligence Department, the Medical Department, the Barrier Department, and the Police Department. These are collectively known to the outside world as the 6 departments of Konoha. Normally, ninjas are merely carrying out missions under orders. During wartime, they are formed into ninja legions. In reality, they normally have no law enforcement authority in the village, even jonin, unless they encounter spies or similar groups. The Anbu and Root are responsible for handling a few top-secret missions and those within the village that cannot be revealed to the public. Currently, the Anbu chief is the 3rd Hokage's eldest daughter-in-law. As mentioned in the document, the 3rd Hokage's eldest son and daughter-in-law are elite Anbu jonin, and both were Sarutobi Hiruzen's trusted assistants. Root Minister didn't need to say anything. That old scoundrel Shimura Danzu was incompetent. The intelligence branch, as its name suggests, is responsible for intelligence gathering, and it also has 3 sub-branches: the Interrogation Department, the Investigation Department, and the Code Department. The current head of the intelligence branch is Yamanaka Inoichi. The Konoha Medical Department, founded by one of the Sannin, Tsunade, though Tsunade is not currently in the village, is undeniably one of the strongest medical departments in the entire shinobi world. The Barrier Department, a very mysterious and cold-blooded branch, mostly serves to guard the village. However, it is also extremely dangerous, as they bear the responsibility of sealing the Biju and defending the entire village. Above is Konoha, a system of 5 major departments within the Hokage era, with the 6th department being the Uchiha Police Department. The police department, established during the 2nd Hokage's reign, can be said to be the formalized private force of the Uchiha clan, with the Uchiha clan's influence playing a leading role within this department. At the same time, the police department wields extremely powerful influence, possessing sole authority over law enforcement. In other words, they don't need to report to the Hokage. The police department has the power to execute first and report later. The police department, as its name suggests, exudes a suffocating atmosphere, though this is, of course, how it appears to outsiders. The internal police department is divided into various branches such as the Interrogation Department, Intelligence Department, Logistics Department, and Military Department. It can be said to have everything, truly a miniature version of the political system. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Yoru couldn't help but murmur to himself, "This is almost like turning a country into a double-edged sword." This shows the inner workings of the prestigious Uchiha clan, the foremost ninja clan. Yes, boss, this is the information you requested. Shisui, as the most outstanding genius of the Uchiha clan, became a jonin at nearly 13 years old. Now at 14, relying on his 3-Tomo Sharingan, he is no less capable than an average elite jonin, and his position within the local police force is quite high. Looking at the intelligence report in his hand, Uchiha Yoru carefully confirmed it, then let out a sigh of relief. He carefully set the documents aside and looked up at Shisui, who clearly seemed a little downcast. "Shisui, you're 14 years old this year, right?" Seeing the thoughtful expression on Brother Yi's face as he inquired, Shisui was a little stunned, even somewhat at a loss for words, and nodded, saying, "Yes, Brother Yi." At this moment, Uchiha Yoru suddenly let out a deep sigh, shaking his head and saying, "Shisui, your strength is undeniable. No one would think you're inferior to the genius Kakashi, but ultimately, you're still too young. Perhaps your constant exposure to these dark things will harm you." Upon hearing these words, Shisui immediately showed a look of guilt on his face. The Night Clan member before him was only 1 year older, yet he had far more exposure to the darkness than Shisui himself. Now he was even bearing the burden between the Uchiha and the Hokage. The moment that thought crossed his mind, Shisui's feelings of frustration and dissatisfaction vanished without a trace. Was the pressure on Big Brother Night not greater than his? Had he been exposed to darkness less than him? Then what right did he have to run away? Yes, Big Brother, rest assured, Shisui will definitely not disappoint you. At this moment, Shisui's face showed a resolute expression, and seeing Uchiha Yoru smiling and shaking his head, he said, "Shisui, you might be wrong to say that. We are all doing this for our clan, for Konoha." Without leaving a trace, Shisui pushed the documents forward. Looking at the document in his hand, especially the character listed at the top, his eyebrows immediately furrowed slightly. Sitting upright at the table, Uchiha Yoru lowered his head 3/4 of the way, his gaze fixed on the shadows within, seemingly revealing a hint of despondency. "Umino, Looking at the documents in his hand, especially the information at the bottom stating that his only remaining relative was his grandson, Umino Iruka, whose parents had sacrificed themselves on the night of the Nine Tails, Shisui's hands trembled uncontrollably. Brother, what trouble has this Umino tree gotten itself into? At this moment, Shisui's voice, now hoarse, revealed that this was indeed a very ordinary Chunin family. The entire family were ordinary Chunin, almost all of them having perished in the Ninetales night, leaving only a grandson still attending ninja school. He himself was also just a Chunin. As if sensing Shisui's inner resistance, Uchiha Yoru took a deep breath, opened his eyes, and for a moment the blood-red Sharingan in his Tamagatama eyes swirled downwards, revealing an even greater sense of suppressed emotion. Shisui, a ninja's primary duty is to execute missions. You have no business managing anything else. Upon hearing this, Shisui couldn't help but curl his lips into a self-deprecating smile. Another mission to handle something Roop can't handle. How? For a moment, a suffocating atmosphere filled the office. Finally, Knight spoke up, looking at Shisui's dejected expression, and shaking his head, said, Shisui, this is all for Konoha. A few days ago, the police arrested him and took him to Umino Tree to clean things up a bit. This person is transferring the shop's name to Sarutobi Sun Moon. Remember not to let Umino Iruka leave too much property behind. The implication was clear. Leaving behind too much wealth would actually harm Umino Iruka, who was about to graduate. It was clear that this wasn't the first time Shisui had done this, but each time was a psychological torment for him. Brother, how much longer do we want to keep this going? This time, Shisui finally couldn't hold back and spoke up. In fact, in the short time since his return to Konoha, less than 3 months, he had carried out too many missions that couldn't be revealed to the public. Brother, do you know what the villagers have been saying about us at Uchiha lately? Since their last return to Konoha with Orochimaru had been practically hidden away. However, as a member of Root, Orochimaru had many missions to carry out, and naturally, a large portion of these Root missions, which could not be revealed to the public, were taken over by the Uchiha and Hyuga clans. After all, given Orochimaru's status, even the Snow Hidden wouldn't casually send someone on missions, let alone someone whose position in Root is equivalent to second in command. Naturally, he would be responsible for carrying out certain missions that couldn't be revealed to the public. These missions were then taken on by Orochimaru, a member of a ninja clan, and the Uchiha clan, given the circumstances, naturally received the main part of the missions. But it's clear that these things can't be revealed to the public, causing some restraint, especially since Shisui's worldview is constantly being challenged and redefined. The police department, an unremarkable room in the office. Yes, boss, everyone in the village is saying that the Uchiha, relying on their noble lineage, will arrest and punish any common ninja who makes a mistake, but will turn a blind eye to the various powerful families in the village. The police department has long since become rotten. At this moment, Shisui clearly revealed a hidden secret, while Uchiha Yoru, upon hearing these words, feigned a troubled and worried expression, but ultimately transformed it into determination. Shisui, you must understand, this is all for the peace and stability of Konoha. Upon hearing these words, Uchiha Shisui's youthful face showed an even greater sense of unease, and he couldn't help but whisper, brother, Root's missions are not meant to be revealed to the public. So how can there be so many of them, all of them? After a long silence, Uchiha Shisui still didn't say anything. While Uchiha Yoru let out a deep sigh, Shisui, you need to understand that the village is going through a difficult time right now. A particularly challenging period. This department's internal mission cannot be revealed to the public. Almost all of their actions are major, life-threatening undertakings to the point of wrongful convictions. Well, I'm truly sorry, but the one who relayed the mission was Root, and they were completely unaware of the situation. Where there is light, there is darkness. Even if the third Hokage was as great and selfless as he was, how could there be light if there were no darkness? In the later anime, the Sarutobi clan could form an army. Was that really just hype? If it weren't for the tireless accumulation of time and effort, there wouldn't be the Sarutobi army that followed. Shisui, the third Hokage of the Sarutobi clan needs you right now, so there are some things you just need to understand and swallow. Konoha's fortunes were so vast that the Sarutobi clan felt they needed to exploit the interests of others to grow. With Uchiha Yoru present, the nature of some missions naturally began to change, such as the need for them to secretly deal with this Umino tree. Chunin Umino, while on a mission, was taken prisoner by the Grass Country for half a month, and his actions, both real and fictitious, revealed secrets that turned him into a spy. The phrase mixed reality and illusion perfectly describes the situation, especially since the opponent is just an ordinary chunin. Better to kill 1,000 innocent people than let one guilty person escape. Isn't that a very Root style of leadership? This is the Root mission, but its nature has undergone a transformation over the night. That's Umino, the nominal owner of the through-room shop. After all, the Ninetails' entire family died, so naturally, they left behind a considerable inheritance. This Umino tree is suspected of being stolen, so this asset needs to be moved. And since Knight doesn't want to betray his enemy Root, he came up with this solution. Shisui, these 3 shops were secretly gifted to Sarutobi Sun and Moon. The bright-faced police force is covering up for Umino, who has already rebelled while in prison. The property has been confiscated. As for the assets reserved for this person, Umino Irika's grandson, 200,000 won is outside of that, and the rest is confiscated. Root's research requires a large amount of funding. At this point, a profound glint appeared in Uchiha Yoru's eyes, and he felt not the slightest bit of remorse for his self-serving actions. After all, if he didn't act now, his clan would be finished anyway. He wanted to seize the opportunity to make money. Make money. Just make money. Shisui naturally understood this statement, but it was precisely because he understood it that he let out a wry smile. Wasn't the so-called Root Research Finance simply the funding that Lord Orochimaru needed? Remember to make it clear, after these 3 shops are given to Sarutobi Higashigumi, half of the shop's income will belong to us at Uchiha. Taking power for personal gain naturally requires a reasonable way to silence everyone's mouths. Giving the Sarutobi clan ninjas a gift is a despicable act that inevitably drags people down with it, and the Hokage, being from the Sarutobi clan, is certainly not a suitable candidate. By taking Root skin, I'll let you complete the mission, and I'll even give the Sarutobi clan the main share of the rewards. Isn't this also a way of subtly currying favor? In the end, the Uchiha clan only got half of the shop's income. It's safe to say Root just did a lot of talking, while the Sarutobi clan sat at home. Root completed the mission, and the Sarutobi clan received money from out of nowhere. In contrast, the Uchiha clan did dirty, arduous work, and naturally received their reward for completing their missions. Of the 3 sides, only the Uchiha are actually working. What more do you want? Sarutobi Haikyuu is a squad leader on missions in the land of Grass. A dazzling scene unfolded before Shisui's eyes. As the squad leader who returned alive after the mission, his team members were either dead or prisoners, and among these prisoners was Umino. Seeing this scene, Shisui couldn't help but fall into deep doubt. This apparent betrayal, could it be that Sarutobi Higashimetsu wanted to erase this stain from his ninja career? Seemingly sensing Shisui's skepticism, Uchiha Yoru lowered his voice and said in a deep tone, "Shisui, ninjas are weapons. They don't need emotions. That's what ninja school taught us. At the same time, ninjas do need emotions, right and wrong. I don't know, and no one has ever told us. But now, doing all this, we just know, even if we Uchiha don't do it, other ninjas will, so it's for the Uchiha, for Konoha. For Konoha." That was once such an arrogant statement, but after encountering so much darkness, Shisui's unwavering belief began to waver. Was all of this really for Konoha? Why was it the Uchiha who did the dirty work, the Root who was ruthless and heartless, and Sarutobi who ultimately benefited, seemingly doing nothing? Inside the gloomy prison, because of the barrier, virtually no sound could be heard from the outside. Yet within the cells, heart-wrenching groans could be heard. "Haha, you Uchiha bastards, I knew it. I was just drunk and disrupting public order. How could it be like this? Turns out you and Sarutobi Sun and Moon are all in cahoots." At this moment, a Uchiha ninja from the police department, his eyes gleaming with cold light, continued to inflict torture while speaking in a low voice. "Listen, if you write down this letter of repentance yourself and are willing to hand over these 3 shops to Sarutobi Higashikyu as compensation, I will give you a quick death." Phew! At this moment, Umino revealed a ferocious smile and violently spat out a mouthful of blood. But just as they were about to continue the torture, the prison door opened, revealing a light that made Yumino's eyes squint slightly, and the Uchiha ninja beside him respectfully stood up. Captain Shisui. Uchiha Shisui, walking towards the prison cell, waved his hand, and the ninja inside naturally understood his meaning. They nodded slightly, turned around, and left, simultaneously closing the prison cell door once again. At that moment, Umino raised his head, his swollen eyes staring at the Uchiha ninja in front of him, and immediately a mocking smile appeared on his face. Oh, isn't this Shisui, the genius ninja of the Uchiha clan? How could a genius fall into depravity, becoming Sarutobi's hound? Shisui remained calm, his face showing not the slightest ripple of emotion. In an instant, blood red Three-Tamo Sharingan appeared in his eye sockets, and immediately afterward, the opponent's expression began to become vacant. Following the silence in the prison cell, only Shisui and Umino were heard saying one sentence each, while simultaneously beginning to write their names and handprints on the Book of Repentance. The Repentance Book's meaning is very simple. Umino, after being captured as a prisoner in the land of Grass, failed to withstand the pressure and chose to reveal the village's secrets, leading to the mission's failure. As the mission's captain, Sarutobi Higashimichi was naturally implicated. Filled with endless regret, he was willing to give 3 shops, owned by Umino himself, to Captain Sarutobi of the Sun and Moon, as compensation for everything. Looking at the Book of Repentance in his hand, Shisui let out a self-deprecating laugh. After the large prison door opened, he threw down a remark and left the cell. Let his relatives come and see him one last time. Konoha. The beautiful sunlight fell upon the earth. Konoha presented a joyful and prosperous appearance, as if the Ninetales Knight of the Ninetales from last year had been carried away by the wind. Inside a 3-story detached wooden house, Uchiha Yura smiled as he looked at Sarutobi Ryu, a middle-aged man whose appearance now revealed a stiff expression. Uchiha Yoru, I don't know what you mean by this. In front of them was a real estate paperwork shop, and at this moment, Sarutobi's stern face seemed to reveal a sense of uprightness and justice. Uchiha Yoru, upon arriving at the door, spoke with a serious expression. Umino was arrested by the police department for drunken troublemaking. However, it was also because of his drunken slip of the tongue that, after investigation, it was determined that he had betrayed the village's interests, which led to the failure of Sarutobi's Sun Moon Jonin mission in the land of Grass. Umino has confessed, but the other party has a nephew at home who is very remorseful and feels guilty. However, his nephew, Umino Iruka, is innocent, so he hopes that former Captain Sarutobi of the Sun and Moon Jonin can forgive him. Uchiha Yoruichi spoke with such righteous indignation that it was all the truth, while Shisui, crouching behind him with his head bowed, concealed his gaze, afraid of losing control and letting the other person see his disgusted expression. Upon hearing these words, Sarutobi Higashimetsu was immediately stunned, but after so many years of experience, his expression turned grim as he hesitated for a long time. Finally, as if he had made a decision, a glint of light flashed in his eyes. So this time, is Lord Orochimaru still representing the Uchiha clan? Ultimately, Uchiha Yoru's identity was not simple. He was not only an Uchiha, but also a disciple of Orochimaru. Similarly, Sarutobi Higashimetsu was also a Sarutobi clan jonin. He needed to clearly understand the identity and purpose behind the other party's visit. Seeing Sarutobi's questioning gaze, Uchiha Yoru revealed a fake smile. Whether Uchiha or Hyuga, aren't they all villagers? In their voices, it seemed certain that Orochimaru was the future Hokage, and that both the Uchiha and Hyuga clans were part of the village. These words were ambiguous, and Sarutobi Sun Moon fell silent. He understood that the other party was sending a signal to appease him, but who did they represent? The Uchiha needed reconciliation with the village, and Orochimaru needed it too, to the point that there was no distinction between the Uchiha and Hyuga clans. They had both switched allegiance to Orochimaru. More importantly, at the moment, no one would have thought that Orochimaru would betray and flee later, even though, as a Sarutobi clan jonin, he had already entered the center of power and was aware of the clan's intrigues. But he was still clear about one thing. That's precisely why Orochimaru's identity is so important. Moreover, they did harbor a far-fetched hope of making Sarutobi Shinosuke the 5th Hokage. But compared to Orochimaru, the difference in their prestige seemed insignificant. Oh, I never thought that he was the one who leaked the information about the mission back then. At this moment, Sarutobi's sun and moon transformed into a figure of lamenting the fate of the people, finally shaking his head and sighing, initially, due to leaked intelligence. So many people were killed. At this moment, Sarutobi seemed to be lost in his initial memories, but Uchiha Yoru wore a smile, accepting this kind gesture, while Shisui felt a deep disgust towards this political transaction. Sarutobi had one stain on his life, the failure of a secret mission in the Land of Grass, which resulted in the deaths of 73 ninjas. However, the exact cause of the mission's failure could not be determined. But one thing Sarutobi, Higashimetsu, and Shisui both knew in their hearts, Umino was nothing more than a scapegoat. This is probably just a dirty political deal, the Uchiha using their power for personal gain, doing Orochimaru's dirty work, and then sending a friendly signal to Sarutobi. So you're saying this was something the Uchiha themselves came up with? Do you think anyone would believe that? Besides, by doing this, aren't you Uchiha representing Orochimaru? Ah, you're making fun of me emerging from the sorrowful memories. Sarutobi Hiyori revealed a bitter smile, seemingly as if it were true, his hand already reaching for the property deeds for the 3 shops. In Shisui's eyes, the other party was clearly engaging in some kind of dirty dealing. Yet not only did he remain expressionless, he even feigned a sorrowful, compassionate demeanor, sighing and saying, "These can be considered compensation for the 73 ninjas who sacrificed themselves in the Cross Country mission. Whether or not these sacrifices can ultimately be compensated for by future generations of ninjas is unknown, but for now, it's clear that the 3 shops have fallen into the enemy's hands." At this moment, Sarutobi's heart was also filled with sorrow. The filth in his heart seemed to have finally been cleansed. Both men exchanged a fake, political smile as they drank tea together. Finally, seeing each other's silent smiles, Sarutobi Sun Moon inwardly sighed, realizing that this man was indeed not a simple ninja. No wonder he could become Orochimaru's right-hand man. I wonder what Lord Orochimaru means by this? Having secured the good opportunity, it was impossible to give it away for free. Sarutobi inquired further, but Uchiha Yoru shook his head and sighed, saying Teacher Orochimaru is obsessed with researching and inventing ninjutsu. As you know, it's incredibly expensive. In short, once you've taken control of the shop, it's naturally not your entire responsibility. It's a collaborative effort. At this moment, Sarutobi's Sun Moon fell silent after hearing this. Their clan had hoped for another Hokage, but the Uchiha's sincerity was certainly sufficient. Moreover, even if the Sarutobi clan produced another Hokage, Orochimaru would undoubtedly be a powerful figure. The other party not only offered money, but more importantly, their reputation. It was like erasing a stain on his life, and this sincerity touched him deeply. Half a day later, after Sarutobi had gazed intently at the one-eyed youth, he couldn't help but lower his gaze and gently sip the hot tea in his hand, finally saying softly, "I understand." The transaction was successful. He was now 40 years old, arguably on the decline. He had painstakingly and meticulously worked his whole life to reach this point, and now the stain on the Kingdom of Grass was being erased right before his eyes. How could he not be tempted? The two sides reached a political deal. Uchiha cleared his name, and he revealed some reliable information. Recently, there have been quite a few voices within the clan calling for the young clan leader to become Hokage. But similarly, some feel that Orochimaru's prestige is too great. A cool breeze blew through, and after the two finished drinking their last cup of tea, Uchiha Yoru smiled and respectfully nodded, saying, "I respectfully request that Lord Sarutobi's Sun and Moon stop here. Uchiha Yoru will take his leave now. Be careful when you go out." This wasn't Sarutobi's concern, nor was it a polite remark, but rather a subconscious warning to avoid being discovered. Uchiha Yoru smiled and nodded, saying, "Don't worry, the ninja following me is Shisui, known for his body flicker technique. The meaning is very clear. Rest assured, no one noticed them when they arrived today, and similarly, no one will notice them when they leave." Uchiha Yoru took Shisui away, and in the silent room, Sarutobi Hiyori's face showed a complex expression as he muttered to himself, "Umino, rest assured, I will take good care of your nephew. Uchiha Naka no Jinja." In the gloomy secret chamber, Uchiha Yoru respectfully knelt below, facing clan head Fugaku and Elder Shura. After a long while, Fugaku finally revealed a calm expression, but then he looked at the elder and spoke. Elder Shanna, the price Uchiha Yoru paid for his clan is as clear as day. Uchiha Yoru, crouching below, heard these words and his heart stirred slightly. It's here. Finally, it's here. He'd done so much, and the clan finally wanted to show some appreciation. Otherwise, they'd just be making people work without paying. Who would do that? Besides, that fake master didn't understand the principle of using both kindness and authority. The elder beside him calmly glanced at Uchiha Yoru, then lightly stroked his chin and said, "Indeed, you've done quite well, especially becoming Orochimaru's disciple." At this point, the elder suddenly let out a hoarse laugh, giving Uchiha Yoru a meaningful glance before shaking his head at Fugaku beside him and saying, "My body is deteriorating day by day. One day I will need someone to take over." Upon hearing this, Fugaku calmly and gently nodded. Uchiha Yoru has rendered great service this time, and the 7th Division of the Police Department is temporarily lacking a team leader. The Ministry of Public Security. This is a truly powerful department, arguably equivalent to the Konoha Police Department, with each division overseeing a specific area of Konoha. Uchiha Yoru Fugaku is like the general director, and the squad leaders below him are like the regional sub-directors. Upon hearing these words, Uchiha Yoru lowered his head even further, but his heart was pounding. Before this, even with the title of Orochimaru's disciple, he was still just an ordinary ninja. To put it simply, the common people of the shinobi world are the ordinary citizens, and ninjas are the government personnel who wield power, but ultimately they are still soldiers. Even the most powerful jonin are merely so-called kings of soldiers, famous on the surface, but without real power. Take Hada Kakashi, for example. You're incredibly strong, but if you just think about causing trouble in Konoha, and the Konoha 6 departments actually come to detain or interrogate you, you really won't be able to do anything about it. In the ninja world, there are too few truly powerful departments or branches of government, or rather, the power circles are so vast that even the most powerful ninja, unless they have reached cage level, can only compromise under such immense power. The police squad leader, having truly stepped onto the ladder of power, naturally only reached the center of the Uchiha clan's power structure. After all, the relationship between the Uchiha and Konoha remains very delicate. After Fugaku opened his mouth, there was complete silence for half a day, and the elder even narrowed his eyes as if deep in thought. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Nightheart secretly cursed the group of old foxes, but on the surface, he pretended to be excited and frightened. Although teacher Orochimaru was imprisoned, he did his best to mend the relationship between Konoha and other clans. This one sentence instantly caused a glint of light to flash in the eyes of Fugaku and the other elder, as they both simultaneously thought of something. Teacher Orochimaru said, "The Uchiha clan is now isolated, and it's the perfect time to establish a bridge of communication with the major clans. A 3-foot-thick layer of ice doesn't form in a single day." But upon hearing these words, the elder couldn't help but burst into laughter and clap his hands, saying, "Excellent, excellent. Truly worthy of Orochimaru. A 3-foot-thick layer of ice isn't formed by just one day of cold weather." This saying is absolutely true. Next to Uchiha Fugaku, a smile also appeared on his face. Others might not understand the meaning, but those who had been in contact with power for years would certainly grasp it. Even though Orochimaru was imprisoned, he wouldn't give up, for example, by having his own faction begin to establish friendly relations with other clans in Konoha. Ultimately, Orochimaru's current suppression of the Snow Clan is clearly due to the fact that the former Hokage feared this balance would be disrupted, affecting their interests. Orochimaru also made his move. During his time in the snow, he could conveniently establish rapport with the various clans, and as for future clan interests, wouldn't this provide ample time for reconciliation and compromise? There would always be a situation where everyone is happy and satisfied, or rather, the powerful remain unmoved while the weak must yield some advantage. This naturally wouldn't be something Orochimaru would do himself. And now that the Uchiha clan is completely on Orochimaru's side, they've become the easy targets. But time and again, the Uchiha were delighted to see this. They were actually hoping to use this opportunity to build trust with the newly established major clans of Konoha. This was practically a chance presented to them. The Uchiha are being isolated. Well, right now we represent Orochimaru, and no one can say for sure who will be the 5th Hokage in the future. So if we really offend him, the future of the Uchiha clan will be ruined, and we can't afford to be offended. Although they implicitly acknowledged the Sarutobi clan's actions, that didn't mean they wanted to confront Orochimaru directly. Fugaku, I think Shisui's quite good. Shisui has always worked at the police department, hasn't he? It would be perfect to transfer him to be the deputy for the night boy. He can start taking on this responsibility sooner, and perhaps the 7th squad should be reshuffled. Elder Shanna smiled broadly as Uchiha Yoru had finally brought about a breakthrough for the clan. Fugaku, standing beside him, also smiled and nodded, saying, "Good, from today onwards, you, Uchiha Yoru, are appointed as the commander of the 7th squad of the police department. You will be independent of the police department and directly under the jurisdiction of Lord Orochimaru, responsible for maintaining order and patrolling the western street of the village." A grand gesture. To directly hand over a police unit from a squad to Orochimaru, this is a truly extravagant move. Firstly, it demonstrates a firm stance on Orochimaru's side for everyone to see. And secondly, it's a legitimate way to act under Orochimaru's banner. Is this really the Uchiha Police Department? Politics, when not openly revealed, requires a veneer of integrity. Upon hearing these words, Uchiha Yoru nodded firmly to the two. "Thank you, clan head and elders, for your trust, for the sake of the Uchiha." The police department has 9 divisions under its command, each responsible for patrolling the entire Konoha city and patrolling within a certain radius of the Konoha suburbs. Being in charge of a suburban village is a tedious job, but the team members are relatively large. Being in charge of a village within the city itself is much more relaxed. For a moment, Uchiha Yoru was overwhelmed with excitement. This time, he felt he had truly stepped into the center of power and was beginning to wield a significant share of authority. From now on, he would have the right to speak in the clan's council. Looking at the young Uchiha Yoru, the elders couldn't help but show their admiration. They hadn't misjudged him. To have achieved such great benefits for the clan, he was truly a hero of the Uchiha clan. While expressing his admiration, the shrewd and experienced Elder Shanshin couldn't resist offering a couple of constructive criticisms. "Chief, I recall that the 7th detachment withdrew quite a few men to the border. It seems we're somewhat short on personnel." With a meaningful glance at the clan leader beside him, the elder instantly revealed a casual smile. Fugaku was stunned upon hearing this. But after seeing the elder's smile, he immediately understood what was going on and nodded, saying, "The 7th squad is short of members, and they are also responsible for the West Street." At this moment, Uchiha Fugaku and even the elders of the instantaneous era showed thoughtful expressions as they looked at him. Uchiha Nightheart immediately cursed inwardly, "Damn bureaucracy, this stuff really exists everywhere. When you talk to me, just state clearly what you want to die for." If it weren't for the fact that he's been around Orochimaru and has been exposed to a lot of this kind of thing, sometimes he really wouldn't understand. Clan leader, elders, rest assured, just now, along with many elite soldiers from the village who returned with instructor Orochimaru, the 7th squad will restore its operations as quickly as possible. Immediately, both of them broke into smiles, secretly admiring this young man for being so worldly wise. Even at this age, he already saw things so clearly. The meeting was very simple. The claim that the 7th squad was short of members clearly meant they wanted to give the 7th squad to Orochimaru as a token of gratitude. One of them, a small police squad formed by the Uchiha and Orochimaru's elite subordinates, was, frankly, a way to appease Orochimaru. "You see how arrogant we Uchiha are? We directly used our real power to send him away. The purpose is very clear. It's a win-win situation." Konoha West Street Police Department Branch. In the spacious, brightly lit office, looking out through the clear glass at the vast police station, Uchiha Yoru immediately revealed a flicker of his desire for power. The police department has 9 divisions, and the division responsible for the village has a staff of 200 men. In other words, Uchiha Yoru's subordinates can recruit 200 men. Yes, big brother. As the deputy squad leader, Shisui's emotions were clearly not high lately. The shock he had experienced during this period was simply too great. Filled with enthusiasm, he returned to Konoha, eagerly anticipating Orochimaru's ascension to the 5th Hokage position. However, the result was disappointing, and his constant involvement in handling Root's affairs, exposing him to the village's dark side, was an even more devastating blow. At this moment, sitting in the squad leader's position, Uchiha Yoro looked at Shisui's dejected appearance and couldn't help but show a look of disappointment, as if lamenting his failure to mold Shisui into a better person. Shisui, look at yourself. You're so devastated by just this little thing. You have the pride of the Uchiha clan. At this point, Uchiha Yoro's expression became even more resolute, and he nodded solemnly, saying, Shisui, you must believe in the will of fire, believe in the third Hokage, and everything will be fine once Orochimaru becomes the fifth Hokage. After being comforted for a while, Uchiha Shisui forced a strained smile onto his face. Looking at the guiding light in his life, he couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration. He truly was Knight-san, always so composed, always so confident. Yes, boss, congratulations on becoming a Jonin and taking over the 7th Division of the police force. Not bad. Since Uchiha Yoro has been appointed as the captain of the 7th squad, and the Uchiha clan has also submitted a request to the village, they can't possibly have a squad captain who's also a Chunin, can they? To the point of dedication, assisting Orochimaru in handling political affairs on the front lines, this achievement, in the hands of politicians, is more than enough to be considered meritorious. An ordinary ninja wouldn't even need to think about it. Seeing Shisui's forced smile, a mix of his thoughts and words, Uchiha Yoro couldn't help but shake his head and sigh, saying, Shisui, you have a long and arduous journey ahead. Right now, the branch office only has about 30 members, and we need to fill the ranks of the 7th Division as quickly as possible. Yes. Now their relationship was considered superior and subordinate. Although Shisui's strength was greater, he admired Uchiha Yoro even more, so he had no complaints about becoming vice-captain of the 7th squad. On the contrary, he was filled with joy. Yes, boss, the staff had started collecting applications, and the approval process should be completed within a maximum of 3 days. Ninjas are an extremely efficient form of existence. After all, ninjas were trained as weapons from the very beginning. Furthermore, the police force isn't entirely composed of Uchiha members. It also includes civilian ninjas. After all, it's a department. Although the police force was essentially a private armed force of the Uchiha clan, if it only recruited members of their own clan, regardless of whether the numbers were sufficient, this alone would have isolated the Uchiha clan. The time when the true Uchiha were isolated by the other clans of Konoha was likely after the Nine Tails, because before that, the Uchiha had always remained within the heart of the village. Furthermore, the police force also needs public attention, such as letting the current Hokage know about the police force's activities. Similarly, for the Uchiha, they also need civilian ninjas as cannon fodder, or rather, as tools in their hands. The Uchiha clan merely controlled all the real power within the police department, and the ninja clan also needed to interact with the village. Half of the ninja would form small teams with others to carry out missions, and the other noble clans did the same. Seeing Shisui's expression, Uchiha Yoro narrowed his eyes and slowly said, Shisui, remember to bring in the important person who is pursuing Orochimaru-sensei this time. Also, from now on, the representative of the 7th Police Division will no longer be an Uchiha, but will also include Orochimaru-sensei. At this point, Uchiha Yoro took out the list beside him, specifically the list of the Hyuga clan. On Saturday, the 2nd squad of the police force was short one deputy captain. My Hyuga clan feels it would be a good fit, so remember to ask the Hyuga clan for their opinion. Remember, Inuzuka and Aburame are waiting in the village of the various clans. Regardless of what decisions the major clans make, there's one thing to remember. This time, we represent Orochimaru as his instructors, not the Uchiha. So you must understand the importance of the 7th squad. After hearing this, Shisui looked up and saw Uchiha Yoro wearily rubbing his forehead. Both his eyebrows showed signs of exhaustion, and this sight made him feel even more ashamed, as if all the family's responsibilities rested on his elder brother Yoro's shoulders. Yes, boss, if things continue like this, the Saturday squad will probably end up like a sieve with holes all around. Although Uchiha Shisui possessed immense power, it was clear that he was significantly lacking in political acumen. He had made his words so clear, yet the other party still hadn't grasped the point. Looking up at Shisui, whose face showed a hint of worrying, he gave a wry smile, rubbed his brow, sighed, shook his head, and began to explain. Shisui, your strength is worthy of being called the greatest genius of the Uchiha clan, but you are still too immature in politics. You will be the future of the clan, and you need to carefully consider this aspect of politics. The 7th Division of the police force was thrown out by the clan and given to Orochimaru as his teacher, so the 7th Division is no longer under the authority of the police force, nor is it under the Uchiha clan, but under the authority of Orochimaru, the future 5th Hokage. At this point, Uchiha Yura gave a knowing look, while Shisui clearly understood some of it, and not all. Yes, elder brother, I understand what you mean. This can be considered a gesture from the family. It was clear that Shisui only understood the superficial meaning of what was said. The 7th Police Division was indeed the Uchiha clan's flagship, but in Orochimaru's hands, it was different. This was no longer a simple private armed force, but rather represented Orochimaru, a highly likely candidate to become the 5th Hokage, as a small political group. At this moment, Uchiha Yura shook his head. He finally understood why Shisui in the original story could be so desperate as to jump off a waterfall to commit suicide. Even with that personality, he still possessed a sharp political mind. The 7th Squad's representative is Teacher Orochimaru. If any of the major clans in the village are willing to send ninjas to join, it represents Teacher Orochimaru's faction. At this point, Uchiha Yura directly clarified the situation, stating that he was partly responsible for instigating this, and that the Uchiha clan was also pleased to see it happen. The 7th Squad that the Uchiha sent out, and the fact that this squad was waving to the major clans within the village, wasn't about wanting elites, but rather about showing an attitude away for Orochimaru to observe the attitudes of the major clans in the village. It's hard to say exactly which family the 5th Hokage will fall into, but Orochimaru has the greatest chance. Otherwise, in the original story, no Hokage would have been chosen for 2 or 3 years after the Ninetales Rebellion, ultimately leading to Orochimaru's betrayal and escape. Needless to say, Orochimaru's slow ascent to the Hokage position was largely due to Danzo and the 3rd Hokage, aside from some high-ranking officials' intentions. As long as Danzo still wanted to become Hokage, he would never agree to the emergence of such an unruly young Hokage. But the 3rd Hokage didn't think so. He only feared that Orochimaru had already embarked on the path of evil in his mind. To the point that behind the Sarutobi clan, there were a few other clans, but they were merely going along with the flow, not wanting their own interests to be harmed. In the office, seeing Shisui's hesitant expression, Uchiha Yura naturally understood what the other man was thinking, but he didn't want to bring it up. There are some things that can only be kept bottled up in the heart to forever remember this period of time. After one round, the 7th Squad of the police department wants to get the transportation back to normal. This time, it'll be hard work for you, Shisui. Hearing Uchiha Yura's serious tone, Shisui quickly put aside his wandering thoughts and respectfully nodded, saying, "Yes, big brother, rest assured. The 7th Division of the police department will absolutely be fine after one round." Seeing Shisui's reassuring gaze, Uchiha Yura gave him a deep look, then slowly lowered his head, giving off a sense of concealment. The 7th Division of the police department not only represents the Uchiha clan, but also interacts with Orochimaru's teachers and other clans in the village. So their future direction will inevitably differ. It could be said that this 7th Squad is a miniature version of Orochimaru's forces, and it's predictable that this place will definitely attract the attention of the major clans within Konoha. Brother, what are you talking about? Shisui was still a little confused. The police department used to be represented by the Uchiha clan, and the police department was responsible for public order and security. In the village, any crime falls under their jurisdiction, but the fact that Uchiha Yura is using such a serious tone to hand over the matter suggests there must be something different going on. Seeing Shisui's questioning look, Uchiha Yura's gaze lowered even further as if he himself were plunged into darkness, and he said in a hoarse, low voice, "From now on, the 7th Police Division will implement the principle of ninja supremacy in public order management, and the great ninja clans will be the most important." Upon hearing these words, Shisui's expression suddenly changed drastically. He looked up at Uchiha Yura, who, after conveying this resolve, appeared weary and closed his eyes, as if this was an incredibly difficult decision he was making. The meaning is very clear. Under his leadership, Orochimaru is also releasing a political signal to the Sannin, elevating the status of the shinobi, and at the same time clearly defining the hierarchy within the ninja community. To put it bluntly, when a major clan commits a crime, the clans turn a blind eye, and the ordinary ninja can only accept it as a matter of public interest. Similarly, commoners and ninjas clash under certain circumstances, favoring ninjas. Although not explicitly stated, the division of social status and class is clearly evident. Upon hearing these words, Uchiha Shisui's expression darkened, and he couldn't help but say in a low voice, "Brother, this isn't wartime." Doing this would invite immense criticism. This type of system essentially establishes a silent, unspoken hierarchy and class system only practiced during wartime. After all, ninjas are constantly on the front lines, their nerves on edge, making them extremely prone to causing trouble upon their return. With 3 battles already over, the higher authorities have issued a coercive order for the police department to manage security in the village, especially at this crucial moment. If they don't do a good job, wouldn't that further erode the village's trust in the Uchiha? Shisui. With a rising tone, Uchiha Yoru opened his eyes, which were covered in bloodshot veins, revealing a weary look. Several people have already made their moves. Teacher Orochimaru has been sidelined, and the village is slow to nominate the 5th Hokage. Currently, only this way will Teacher Orochimaru not lose the support of the great clans. Not bad, this clearly protects the ninja community, especially the major clans, even though it's a bit unfair to commoners. But it also elevates the status of ninjas. Bringing someone to a good position is also a great deal. No one dislikes a high and mighty status, especially a ninja who possesses immense power. Shisui, you must understand, even though Teacher Orochimaru is hidden away, the village absolutely cannot be without his reputation. If things really come to that point, the 5th Hokage will face even more trouble. Now, Uchiha Yoruichi personally doesn't represent Orochimaru, but if she gathers countless Orochimaru followers under her command, then the collective voice she speaks will be Orochimaru's voice. After pondering for half a day, Shisui finally let out a deep sigh and nodded, saying, "Yes, big brother, I understand. Thank you for your hard work." In Shisui's eyes, Uchiha Yoru was clearly someone pushed aside by the clan. This position was alluring, but also extremely dangerous. He had witnessed his older brother's utter exhaustion and despair from the political struggles, even to the point of feeling a deep aversion to politics. Go down, there's some darkness that needs someone to do the work. Shisui, you're going to be a genius in the sunlight someday. At this moment, it seemed as though all the pressure rested on Uchiha Yoru's shoulders. While he appeared to be taking on the position of squad leader in the police force, it was also a very difficult task. Because of the political infighting, Uchiha Yoru was the bright representative of Orochimaru, and a slight misstep could make him a sacrificial pawn in the game between the two sides. Even someone completely ignorant of politics would know how dangerous this position was. "Yes, big brother, you rest well. I'll go down first." At this moment, Shisui was filled with shame. He possessed only his own strength, yet he was unable to help with anything, instead burdening Brother Yi with the heaviest responsibility. "Go ahead, Shisui. I need to rest for a while. I still have to go find the teacher to deliver the message later." Exhausted, he rubbed his eyebrows, a picture of mental and physical exhaustion on his face. Shisui could only turn around in shame and leave. At this moment, he could only transform the shame in his heart into strength to strive and alleviate the pressure on his older brother. With a creak, the wooden office door closed, and a beautiful gaze fell upon the room. At that moment, Uchiha Yoru, sitting upright in her office chair, opened her eyes. At this moment, Uchiha Yoru no longer showed the weariness and exhaustion she had displayed earlier. Instead, her eyes narrowed, revealing a look of blissful fascination. Raising the teacup beside him, he gazed intently at the busy figures outside the glass, especially those flickering black dots that resembled fleas, giving him the feeling of trampling the ninja underfoot. A slow, subtle smile curved his lips as Uchiha Yoru narrowed his eyes in fascination, muttering to himself, "So this is what privilege is, indeed, no matter where you are in the world. You can't escape it." Although ninjas possessed immense power, the vast majority were armed individuals. Now we can consider ourselves to have weapons in our hands, can't we? Upon hearing the question again, Uchiha Yoru revealed a smile. No one dislikes the power that comes with it, and although he was still a weapon in the hands of some powerful individuals, he was now considered a leader of those weapons. In the eyes of others, Every step he took was like walking a tightrope, but in his eyes, it was a decision based on future intelligence. Otherwise, would the family really grant him such great power just because he had accomplished such a great feat? One must understand that regardless of which squad leader it is, they are all experienced, reputable, and elite Jonin. So what does he count for? To put it bluntly, his overall strength barely reaches the level of a special Jonin. Looking at the Jonin appointment decree that the Hawkage had brought to his desk, he immediately revealed a mocking smile, perhaps in your eyes. Someone who can be easily manipulated has never caught your attention. Right. He also wants a counterpart in terms of strength, and right now his strength is completely insufficient. But everyone in Konoha has tacitly acknowledged it. This potato is burning hot in my hand, he continued, adding that his strength lay not only in anticipating future changes, but also in his self-confidence, the confidence that he could quickly develop the strength to deserve this position.